ready to be terrified. Yes, okay, I'm going to put myself in his position. Gosh, did you get that bad?
Let's see.
I don't have to do it, I just have to make the decisions. I'm good.
Jake, how are you?
Just like a week. Thanks. That would be tough.
Wonderful. Yeah, it looks like we are finally.
Challenger? No, this is Challenger. Teacher. 86.
We've got our scout.
Certain things you remember. You were almost targeted. I was on scouts.
You drinking water?
You need a water. I'm going to.
Welcome. Oh, that's pretty good. Didn't you? Yeah. Are your ears low?
Is there enough there?
Is this the official?
Yeah.
You were emailed them, I just printed something wrong, so.
That doesn't look like enough. Is there enough there? Here. I'm sorry. That's way better than I thought it was going to.
Impressive.
It really went well.
Practice for that, Shane.
Is there one more?
That's why we didn't get one. All right, I don't know.
So you can have
It's more of a shuffle. It's not shuffleboard, but yeah, shuffleboard or. It's one where there's that is the funniest thing.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we'll go ahead and get started with our city council meeting this evening. We appreciate all of you in attendance. To begin tonight's meeting, we'll have an opening that will be provided by Council Member Jake Garn, after which scouts from Troop 356 will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Our Father in heaven, this evening we approach thee in prayer in thankfulness for our many blessings to live in this wonderful community. Grateful for the freedom of assembly to be able to gather here to determine how our government operates locally. We're grateful for the representatives who are here from local businesses this evening, for those who are here to speak on various issues before us, for the scouts and their participation in the meeting this evening. We're grateful for the issues we have before us and ask that thou would help us to have the wisdom and to fill in the gaps where we do not know all things, that we will be able to make wise decisions that will be in the best interests of our community and those who live here. We ask a special blessing to be with all those who cannot be here and those who are suffering with various health or other issues, that they may have comfort in their suffering and that they may be healed. And we say these things in the name of thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Garn, and Scouts from Troop 356 for leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Before we get started on our agenda items this evening, we would make you aware we have agendas available on the wall over here to the left. You're more than welcome to grab one and check off as we move through the items this evening. Before we begin, we'll start with introductions. My name is Steve Hyatt, and I serve as the mayor of Kaysville City.
Jake Garn, City Council.
Dave Adams.
Susan Lee, City Council.
Chris Snell, City Council.
Larry Page, City Council.
Shane Scott, City Manager.
Maria
Maria Devereaux, City Recorder.
Andy Thompson, engineer.
Thank you very much. Before we jump into tonight's agenda items, we do have just a quick item that will turn to Councilmember Susan Lee regarding Play Unplugged.
Once again, we're having a drawing for the kids of the community who are involved in Play Unplugged, earning their brag badges. They get the opportunity to come here before every council meeting throughout the summer and get a prize for this drawing. And so we will, first of all, I want to thank Cheryl and Maria in the city for putting time into making this happen every time. They do a lot of work, and I appreciate that. So we'll go ahead. Two. Oh, it looks like it's a family affair. We have Allison Montgomery and Preston Montgomery. If you two will come up.
Well, congratulations. I think that's the second time in a row we've picked a brother and sister as we've drawn out. Having young kids of my own, I know that that at least causes a little less jealousy maybe at home. So, but it is just a drawing, so no, nothing intentional. Congratulations. The next item on our agenda is Business Spotlight. We have with us tonight Sarah Raynor from Young Notes.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be invited to come and tell you a little bit about my business. My name is Sarah Raynor. To tell you a little bit about myself, I am a mother of 8 children. I grew up in Centerville, and I've been in the last 25 years, I've been in Vegas, and so happy to be home back to Davis County, so happy. I have been a musician since I was 3 years old. I love music. In Las Vegas, I was an advocate for 3 schools for music. I spoke before school boards and tried to save music in our schools because that's usually the first thing that they cut. And I've been an advocate for music for many years. So when I came here, and it seems like the value of music is very strong here in this community, and I'm very grateful for that. And so I decided to start my own children's group. And I started with my own 8 kids. We've sung all over Nevada, a little bit of Arizona, and here. And we are going to actually sing for you today. And so we started with 8 kids. Now we have about 25 kids in our choir, and we're slowly growing. I'm a music teacher at Jefferson Academy, and so most of my students come from there. I do have a few kids from Snow Horse. I also teach at the Vista campus. I teach our special education adults, music and choir. So let's go to the next slide. I do have a mission statement that's very dear to me. Oh, glad I have it here. My mission is for all our members to enjoy each other and to enjoy the value of music and the value of themselves. I taught in the school district here for 3 years, and so I took what I learned from the school district into my own teaching, and also what I've learned from Jefferson, because they have their own curriculum that they follow. So I take both that, and I also am a ORF Schulwerk certified level 1 teacher. I really believe in a big family, and I love my students to serve each other. And this is a service choir, and we go around and we sing and we serve. Okay. Go ahead. So some of the things we do is we build friendships. They build friendships with each other. One of our favorite places to sing is Apple Tree. We do frequent them quite a bit. We even have family members that join, okay? My dad is a veteran, so veterans are very dear to me. And we make sure that we serve all of our veterans. And we were invited last year, to sing at Camp Williams for the tolling of the bell of the USS Harder, and that was a very, very neat experience. We also love our policemen, we also love our firefighters, and we made thank you cards for every firefighter and every policeman in Kaysville, and we went and sang to them and thanked them for their service. Okay, next one. Our kids will participate and learn. Go ahead. I've already gone with that. You can go on. Okay, so here's some of the other things that we've done this year. Go ahead. What we talked about, go ahead. We love, again, Apple Tree Assisted Living Home, and we love our policemen. Go ahead. Order of our Safe Harbor Crisis Center here, and I'm very grateful for all the things that they do for them. And so I'm very thrilled every year that they invite my choirs to come and sing at their fundraiser. Oh, go back one, please. Sorry, go back, there you go. We were really excited to be invited to sing at the Bountiful Women's Literary Club. That was fun. We brought our own Santa Claus. Go ahead. Farmington Stations is a very favorite one, especially at the very end where they get to stand on the steps there and take their picture. Go ahead. The Kaysville Tabernacle Celebration is another favorite one. I believe this is our 4th year. This is my first year owning the show choir, but my family has sung there since I think we came here. So we love doing that. Go ahead. And of course, the parade. That was awesome. Thank you. That was my first parade as an adult. My dad was mayor of Centerville, so during the wonderful flooding of '84. So I remember, sitting and doing the parades and everything, and that was really fun. And so this is really exciting for me to have my kids experience, the joy that I had as a kid. So just thank you so much for letting me come. Again, my choir is all based on service. This is their uniforms that they wear. I'm a strong believer in serving in your community, and I am teaching these kids. They range from K to 6th grade. I do have some kids that want to sing with, so they come no matter how old they are. So I'd like to invite my family to come. Now we'll begin. So this song we're going to sing to you is just a very quick by Country Tiffany. And we're just going to sing and thank you so much for all that you do for your community. And I know, as being a daughter of a mayor, how hard it is for families to have their parent be away serving in the community. And so we just wanted to say
Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My country, 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land of the Pilgrim's Pride, from every mountainside, let freedom ring.
thank you for your service.
Incredible. Thank you. Thank you for being here, and to you young ones for coming and singing. That was by far the most impressive performance I've seen since I've been on the city council. So thank you. It was beautiful.
Is there a number, a website, people can reach you?
I do have yes, thank you. It's youngnotesutah.com.
So youngnotesutah.com.
Wonderful.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next on our agenda is introduction of Hope Box Theater. Turn the time to Derek. No, we'll just turn it to Hope Box Theater.
Derek has nudged it over to Ryan.
All right.
Thank you, council members, for giving us some time to speak tonight. My name is Ryan Bruckman. I grew up here in Kaysville, and I'm a member of the board of directors at the Hope Box Theater. Have any of you heard of the Hope Box yet? We're still pretty new. Oh, fantastic. We've got some people who've heard of it. We are a theater that is based here in Kaysville off of Frontage Road that we believe can be part of the legacy of Kaysville. Kaysville has been very supportive of the arts over the years. Having grown up here, I really actually appreciate that. I graduated from Davis and the programs and worked with the city on their summer programs as well. So we appreciate the support that Kaysville City has given to the arts thus far, and we think that the Hope Box Theater can be part of that legacy in Kaysville. Now, we're a little bit different than a lot of the other theaters around in that we have a very unique mission. Our mission is to help families who are battling cancer find hope through the performing arts. Now, what we do is that we have a program called the Wall of Hope program, where for each production that we do, we find a family that is battling with cancer. They come through nominations from our cast members and from the community, and we take these nominations and we select who's in the most need at the time, and we make that person our Wall of Hope recipient. Now, that recipient receives a portion of the ticket donations and any donations made during the run, along with we work to try and include them into the production as much as we can in various ways, whether it be set pieces. We make sure that the cast is aware of the story of the Wall of Hope recipient, so that as we work and as we do the things that we do at the Hope Box, that there's a purpose behind it. It's more than just the fun of community theater. There's a strong cause behind it as well. For example, right now we're preparing for Little Mermaid. We have a bunch of mermaids and sailors running around without a director right now, so you'll have to forgive us when we take off after this. Our Wall of Hope recipient is a 7-year-old girl by the name of Sophie Jacobson. She's battling pelvic bone cancer right now. That's a very sad thing, and that can be very hard on a family to deal with. And we think that through our mission and what we do, we can help bring hope to that family and to the people who want to do some good and have a good time doing it. And we're looking to help build that relationship here in Kaysville with local businesses, with the city itself, with anybody who wants to be a part of it. And this whole thing is, like I said, it's a fantastic opportunity. We have a great story of how we got founded too, and I'd like to introduce now our founder, Jan Williams, who is a 3-time cancer survivor herself, and to let her tell you the story of how the Hope Box came to be.
I would bring a picture because I think a picture says 1,000 words. So I want to show it to you first. This is me. So I want like Ryan said, I am a 3-time cancer survivor. I've had 2 different types of cancer. So knock on something, I hope that 3 times is the last time that I have to go through cancer and through the treatments. But I feel blessed because during one of my last treatments of cancer, I came up with the idea of the Hope Box. I literally had a group of my students. I too am very fond of the performing arts. I've taught singing, dancing, acting for over 18 years, I think. And I've been involved my whole life. But during one of my last treatments of cancer, I had a group of my students, my prayer students, come and sing at my door. And I was having a pretty rough time. I was bald from head to toe. Didn't look like myself. Didn't feel like myself. Couldn't do everything that I used to do. And lost my energy and everything else that I was passionate about, including my business that I built from scratch. And so when these students came to my door, I was filled with so much joy and hope that I went to bed that night and I couldn't sleep. And that's where the Hope Box came about, was how can I put these 2 things together, my experiences with cancer and the love that I have with the performing arts. And so that's how it was born, was the Hope Box. And so Ryan touched on the mission as far as what we do, and I'm going to tell you already, we've only been there for about 1.5 years. And we have already, how many families on that wall? We have 10 families. 10 families on that wall that we have touched. We bring these families in, and the children is what gets to me. Some of them have passed on. Some of them still live on today. But we have brought joy that night One night is all we're asking for, is to bring joy to that family for one night. Get them out of their treatments, get them out of their financial struggles, and just what it affects more than just the person that has the cancer. It affects the family, it affects their friends, their neighbors. It really does affect a lot of us, and I think that we all know someone who has dealt with or is dealing with cancer. And this is the one way that we as a community can come together and to give back to these families. Matter of fact, this little Sophie, right now, she's already came to 2 rehearsals. She was supposed to just come to one, and so she came with her mom and dad, and she was so excited about it that the next night she just showed up. And her dad said, "I'm sorry, I couldn't keep her away." And so she came back, and she was in her pajamas, and she's just a little bald, cute little girl. And right then I'm like, we're making a difference, and we haven't even got to the show yet. That is what our theater's about. And so we really do ask the council, the city, and just everyone in the community to please come and be a part of this with us. We are a nonprofit organization. We're very proud of that. And we've worked really hard to do it the right way and to be able to make the most difference in our community. And we think this is the way we're going to do it. So I hope that you'll join with us. Is there anything else you'd like me to say?
The best way to get a hold of us, hopeboxtheater.com. It's RE right now.
Yeah, hopeboxtheater.com. Please come and support us. I mean, if anything else, come and see our shows. Once you come and see a show, you'll understand there is a difference. Our cast before every show, at the end of every rehearsal, we say the name of that recipient. It really makes a difference, not even those in the audience, but those who are part of the production, whether they're backstage, on stage, working in the costumes. Everyone is affected by this because we all get to see what we do at the very end of our production, and that is we get to see this family that we've touched. So that's our mission, is to bring hope to families who are battling cancer through the performing arts. So we hope that you'll join with us. Thank you.
Thank you. I would just like to make a plug. I attended my first play, I guess last month, The Wizard of Oz. And when I was first told about it, we went online and booked our tickets for our family, or purchased our tickets and printed them off. It was very convenient, and showed up, and I was beyond impressed. Not that I wasn't expecting to be, but I was really, really blown away. It was a great performance of The Wizard of Oz, and the funnest part for me as a father is we went home and bought the old Wizard of Oz on Amazon, and my kids have probably watched it 50 times. And prior going to your play, there's no way I could ever get them to sit down and watch something that starts out in black and white, but they loved it.
Is that we have actually two programs. We have our community theater side, as well as we have our youth side. So he came to a youth production of Wizard of Oz, and even our youth productions, they also pick a wall book recipient. So even the youth get to be involved, which is really cool. So our Little Mermaid is our community theater side, so that you'll see all ages, but it affects even our youth, so it's a great mission.
Very, very impressive. Thank you. Thank you for being here. And we'll, not only as a council and as a city, but something tells me as a community, especially after this presentation, you'll see even more of us rallying around to help. So thank you very much. Thank you for your wonderful efforts. Appreciate you being here. Appreciate it.
Sorry, I have a cast that's made part.
Yep, you're good.
Yeah.
You're good. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
So brochures and cards, is that what you're leaving there? Okay, perfect. Available to anyone that would like to grab one. All right, thank you very much. The next item on our agenda is call to the public. Before we jump into call to the public, there's just two things maybe that I'd just like to address, if I could, quickly. The first is at the conclusion of our city council meeting 2 weeks ago, we had a bit of a discussion about our 4th of July events, and there were some questions raised and some discussion that ensued. And that has led to us reviewing some of our practices and reviewing some of the things that were discussed that night. There may be some of you who are here tonight for call to the public that would like to speak to that even further, rather for or against. But I would like to just maybe offer two things. We have asked an independent third party to review the discussion that evening and the things that were discussed. And I might recommend that that the council included, and maybe each of you in attendance, in short time, I'm sure in the next several weeks, we'll have an independent assessment of the things that were discussed. I think it's probably important at this point to reserve our judgment and to reserve maybe belaboring that issue until such time that we receive those findings or receive that feedback. Certainly to say that if you get up tonight that we're going to, and want to speak to it, we're going to ask you to sit down. But I think the city council is in a position now, and I think for the good of fairness, that perhaps we might benefit most by reserving our thoughts, comments, or judgments until that comes out. The second thing is I've been asked or made aware about discussions to forego or to cancel the water parade at future dates, and that is not a discussion that's before the city council this evening, and to my knowledge, it's not been a discussion that the city council would consider or is considering in the future. My understanding is that everybody is in full support. Some recent discussions have taken place, but none to cancel the water parade anytime in the future. That being said, someone else said, hey, we want to speak in support of the water parade, and that's entirely appropriate as well. But just with those 2 bits of information, I'd like to at least to consider as you share your comments tonight. The purpose of Call to the Public is if you want to speak regarding one of tonight's agenda items or any thought, suggestion, idea, or suggestion that you have for the city council, this would be your opportunity to do so. We do ask that you keep your comments limited to 3 minutes. When you hear the subtle beeping up front, that's an indication that your time has expired, and we ask you to wrap up your comments. Whenever we have discussion or when we have items from Call to the Public, we want to have anyone feel free to speak whatever is on their mind. If you happen to agree with something that was said, is being said, or said during Call to the Public, we would ask you to not applaud and cheer. And if you happen to disagree with something that is being said in Call to the Public, we would ask you to not boo or hiss or any of the other things that might be the opposite of applauding and cheering. Just providing an atmosphere and an environment where anyone can feel comfortable getting up and sharing what they have to say. So with that, we'll open Call to the Public. It's not one of those meetings where we wait to the top of the hour and then, okay.
I'm Dave Davies. We live out in West Kaysville, and I want to speak to some issues that have been front page in the Standard Exaggerator. I use that term with many years of experience. There are some times that people need to speak up and say what needs to be said. And I know that none of us know exactly what another person's thinking or feeling. Only God knows your heart. And sometimes when we do things out in public, there's some question about that issue. Before I begin, neither Councilman Adams nor Director Vance Garfield know of my statement. I've done some investigation, and this statement is made based on my findings of the problem. Let me just say, I spent a little time this last year working in the elections, and I especially worked on Dave Adams and campaign, and I want you to know that I love this brother. There's been a lot of angry dissertation in the press lately, which I feel is unnecessary. It seems like Kaysville needs to come to a realization of, and do we want to have a continuation of the 4th of July water parade or not? I think you already addressing that. I have the following information you should know. In June, Councilman Adams tested his fireworks, or his fire truck, which he purchased out of his own funds just to do the water parade at no cost to the city some 10 years ago. The test showed that the pump seal had blown out from all of the other previous parades. Councilman Adams runs a big red to the maximum for the parade, and this is why the seal was worn. Also, the audio gear blows each year due to the parade madness. Each year, Councilman Adams spends an average of $1,000 of his own money to repair the system. This year, the costs were too much to keep up with, and so sadly, Councilman Adams, I'll finish when I'm finished, okay. Councilman Adams told the parade committee that he was unable to do the water fight right this year. Vance Garfield, Director of Parks and Recreation, said the show must go on, and he found some way to pull the costs together. I might add that as Director of Parks and Recreation, Mr. Garfield has authority to make this decision in accordance with city ordinance. Also, a remote electronic fire ignition system was needed, and that was supplied by the Recreation Department. With the assurance of Mr. Garfield that he would ensure the equipment could be repaired, Councilman Adams, with his volunteer crew of many people, gave the parade committee with the water fight crew all their hearts to keep the tradition up. The cost for the Adams family has exceeded $35,000 over the last 10 years of keeping this going, this tradition, to show which we saw on July 4th, 1916. Also, I might remind the mayor and the city council that Councilman Adams has saved over $550,000 since he took office January 4th, 2016, because of the vast knowledge of repairs and maintenance of infrastructure of the city facilities. He knows how to cut costs and what requirements are needed. Mr. Adams is a gift of God to this city, and you gentlemen and Councilwoman Lee should recognize it. I ask you as the city council to put in the next newsletter, do you want to have the parade or not? Mayor, for your information, I think the state auditor needs to need to look into this matter. It probably will cost about $5,000 for him to do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Brig Lewis, you never know what's going to happen here, do you? I got my Questar gas bill today, and I'm busy paying it. And I see on there a line that says Kaysville City tax. And I don't know why that gravels me a little bit, because Kaysville doesn't do anything with that, but it's there. I suppose if they knew how to tax a candy bar that I bought in Provo, that you guys would get that too. I'd rather have you raise my property taxes than get me with fees and these other little things, because I can deduct them. The second item, during a lull in speeches at a recent White House Correspondents' Dinner, Michelle Obama leans over to chat with Joe Biden. You know, I bought Barack a parrot for his birthday. The bird is very smart. Barack has already taught him to pronounce over 200 words. Wow, that's pretty impressive, says Joe. But you realize that he just speaks the word? He doesn't really understand what they mean. Oh, I know, Michelle replies, neither does the parrot.
My name's Roger Butterfield. I have noticed that there seems to be a family sitting in the first row of the west side of the aisles each city council meeting. They seem to have a grudge against Councilman Adams. I was told that they are the Robinson family, father, son, and daughter. They live by Councilman Snail, and they are parroting questions for Councilman Snail to embarrass Councilman Adams. That that they wrote the Code of Ethics and Conduct, which has been going to be approved tonight. I suggest that you cannot approve this until we have had copies of it so that we might put input in it. A lawyer friend of mine looks at it and says, this is unconstitutional. Can you put it on the website so we can read it and see if we agree that it is unconstitutional? We need to find out if it is legal before we act or action is taken by the City Council members tonight. Thank you.
Council, Mayor, my name's Brett Garlick, and I just was looking at a copy of the draft of the Code of Ethics and Conduct for elected officials that's on the website for anybody to go to if they took the time to do it, or anyway. I just want you to know that I'm extremely disappointed that we're at a point in Kaysville where we need to discuss and adopt a code of conduct for elected officials. I think that when citizens elect their officials, they expect them to act with integrity, with honesty, with courtesy, and with civility. So I just want you to know that it's disappointing that we're at this point. But given that we are here, in reading through this, there's one recommendation that I would like you to consider as you're reviewing this. In Section J, under sanctions and penalties, it lists 5 items. I think that if you look at number 1, it talks about expulsion from open public meetings. If you have an individual who is consistently expelled from open public meetings, I don't think that the citizens are fairly represented. And to have to deal with that for 4 years is probably not a very good service to the community. So I would ask if it's possible to include another item for sanctions and penalties, and that's at the vote of the City Council that you would instruct the county to add a recall election on the next general election for the sanctioned individual. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Josh Sundloff. I think many or most of you know I'm on the Planning Commission, but I'm not here as a Planning Commissioner per se, nor am I here to talk about anything on the agenda or anything from last council meeting. My comment relates to what I perceive as a traffic problem that's been recently created with the installation of the light at 50 West and the light 50 West in Main and the light at 3rd West and 200 North. I think that's created a shortcut that goes along 1st South and through 3rd West. That concerns me because I live on 3rd West. I believe it's on the city's radar screen already, but I am curious about what steps the city is taking or is planning on taking to address the issue. I don't have any hard evidence at the ready. I have anecdotal evidence and my observations, those being the quantity of traffic I just have seen sort of informally increase with my own eyes. But sort of the evidence of that is the stacking that occurs at 3rd West and 200 North at the light for cars wanting to turn left, to turn west. The stacking of those cars has increased dramatically. I think this has also exacerbated the problem that kind of was already there with cars coming from Gailey Park, headed north and south from Gailey Park onto 200 North, or up 3rd West onto 200 North, or on 1st South. And so Actually, the other point that I wanted to make is since the light has come in, at least on 200 North and 3rd West, there's been 4 accidents on 300 West, 3 of which required an ambulance, 1 of which was a rollover. I suspect if it was in a different location in the city, things would have been moving at a quicker pace. But for whatever reason, the residents there have not been quick to move and try to create change. So I guess question, and I don't need an answer right now, what is the city doing? What are the plans in place to address what I perceive as the issue? Does the city even consider it an issue? And what can the neighbors do? I know there's the traffic calming guidelines that are in place. Do we need to start an application? Is it at that point where we need to rally the neighbors? So those are my questions. I'll look forward to answers, and I also look forward to the discussion about the ethics guidelines. Thank you.
Any other items for call to the public?
Is this our only opportunity to speak on behalf of the agenda items, or will we call them individually?
This is your opportunity to speak on agenda items.
I'm Katharina Christensen, and I'm going to address the issue that's on the agenda first about the annexation. So I'm a resident of the old farm at Case Creek, and this was addressed 2 weeks ago, and the encouragement of the city councilman, I believe it was Mr. Adams, to meet with the developer, we did, so I'm here to report about that. We had a meeting last Wednesday. My husband was there. I was not able to attend due to surgery, but it was in part productive and in part not productive. And I see that it's on the agenda this evening.
Actually, Ms. Christensen, now that I recognize specifically this item,
Yes.
we did invite you to speak during that agenda item. I believe some representatives from the neighborhood, so it might be more appropriate.
Okay.
I know I just told you this is the time
Okay.
to speak, but
I can
I'm
put a
thinking.
pin in it and come
Well, I'm
right
thinking
back.
in fairness to what you have to say, asking us to look back and try and remember what you said now that might be applicable in the council's decision, be
Okay.
more appropriate. We'll yield you some time at that point.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you. Any other items for call to the public?
Council, Mr. Mayor, my name is Tracy Brown. I'm from West Kaysville. Just wanted to stand a proponent for the July 4th water parade. I think we ought to have water parades, 6 times a year, and there's no reason why we should ruin civic pride in the community. My family has been in this community for 10 years, and they love supporting it. I have 3 high schoolers that have gone through Davis and continue to support the water parade. Mr. Adams, I've spent personally the last 3 years walking alongside Big Red and making sure other kids aren't running into that truck or in any danger. So I'm a huge proponent at this time of the water parade, the ethics and the violations and the professionalism I didn't want to get into. But what I do want to support is that this city continues to show family pride and continues to have that 4th of July parade. I think Dave Adams is a huge contributor to that. And had I known that there was a small amount of money that was a problem, I would have been happy to donate some of my property taxes or my personal money to ensure that we continue that activity. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Hi, my name is Jackie Jones, and I appreciate being here for a minute. I just feel really strongly enough to be able to come up here and stand and speak to you at the moment. I'm in West Kaysville on Sunset Drive and address the issue that many of us have been talking about. I've been thinking about this for a while because of all the publicity that has been coming out, and as we all know, the social media that has been going on about this. And one of the things that I have loved about Kaysville is that we have a small town love here and respect for one another. But also there's a time to be a lamb and there's a time to be a lion. And I believe that those things are very important. I think that as free speech goes, that we should be able to talk about things, and we should be able to talk about them openly. Some of the things that I have dealt with here that have been exceptional is under Vance Garfield, we had some wonderful things that were donated by him through his position and his discretion that benefited everyone. I have had a tree that is the largest tree in Kaysville. Actually, it's the largest tree west of the Mississippi. And we have people come take pictures all the time with it, standing out front, which is wonderful, but it's on my property. And it is something that Kaysville loves. And Vance knew that that tree needed to be taken care of, and so he made the discretion to use money from the city to cut parts of that tree off to make sure that it was saved in the right way. It was important. Now, one of the other things that Vance did, we did an amazing seminar for Operation Underground Railroad, and one of the things, and many of the people here tonight feel the same way, there was such, and I'm going to use these words, sanctification of the stewardship of all of the people that put into that. There was so much honor in the service of that, and it was donated, the building, for us to use that by the city through Vance. One of the greatest contributors, without asking for anything, was Councilman Adams. He has been very generous. He has been footing the bill for many years for this. I feel very strongly that he needs the support. And here's the other thing is, I think that often we come in here and we feel the elephant in the room, and there's these underlying feelings that are going on. And those have a lot of negative impact. And our city is so much better than this. I think that we really need to look at what these underlying feelings are that are going on, bring them to light, and work through them. Hopefully that makes sense. I support him, and I'm sure my time is up, and thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Melissa McIntyre, and I came straight from the swimming pool to be here tonight. I felt it was that important. I just want to say that I echo the words that have been said, the positives. I love the feel of Kaysville. When we moved here, it was a place I want to raise my children. It's a place where I felt that sense of belonging. All of a sudden, we were family. We're tight like that. And I feel that community love. And as I have just witnessed the negative comments, it's kind of torn that apart for me. And I encourage my children to not be bullies and to be friends to everybody. And I haven't felt that recently. It's something that I feel strongly about. And I love diversity. I think it's great to have those different opinions, but I don't think we need to call each other names. I was called a few names last night from members of our beautiful Kaysville City, and it hurt. And I got a sense of how Dave Adams felt. And he's a dear friend of mine, and I will stand up for him because no one should be treated like that. I think it's important that we respect one another. Whether they're right or whether they're wrong, they're still our family here in Kaysville. So I'd like that to be recognized and be reinforced by our leaders of this wonderful city, that we might feel that community love and encourage one another to, sacrifice our time, sacrifice our things that we need to do to make this county wonderful, this city wonderful. I know each one of you sacrificed your time away from your families, and the time, maybe money, things like that, is valuable to you. And I witnessed that firsthand with Dave, where I see it in his family where he's dedicated. His wife misses things because he's here with you, and that's important. So thank you. I appreciate your time, and I appreciate the respect and love that we feel here in our community.
Thank you.
talk from back there. My name is Mike Flood. I live at 6070 600 South here in Kaysville. We've lived here for 20 years. First and foremost, I want to thank each of you for your service. I know it's not easy to sit where you sit. I've never sat on a city council. My dad did 35, 40 years ago in Farmington during the time they had the flood, the mudslide and the floods through the canyon, and there was a lot of public passion and that went on at that time. So I thank you. I appreciate what you do. I don't know any of you personally, but Dave Adams. I've only known Dave. I've known him for less than a year. Became acquainted with him when his son joined a baseball team that I coach. I've had an opportunity on probably a dozen occasions now since we've met to speak about mostly personal things, but recently some of the public things that have come up. I want to just say a couple things, and first I'm going to speak directly to you, Dave. I appreciate your passion. I appreciate your fervor, your desire to make things that you perceive and that many perceive in our city better. Things that have gone on for too long in some cases, some backdoor things, some things that many of us as residents aren't aware of. You've saved the city, the residents to this point, the 7 months of your service, thousands of dollars, and I believe you have intent to continue. I also speak directly to you in the sense that I say, Dave, you and I have had a lot of personal conversations, and I know how passionate you are. But as a public representative, I would appreciate the fact that you work through those issues and try and deal with them in a little more professional manner. He and I have had a lot of conversation about this, and I hope he appreciates the slight public reprimand. I want to speak to Councilman Garn and Councilman Snell. I don't know you personally. I have no grudge against you, not at all. I know people that know you both personally and speak highly of you outside of these settings. As I watched the city council meeting, the last 20 minutes of the meeting 2 weeks ago, I have to tell you that the 10-minute diatribe that the two of you went on and danced around, and the elephant that stood right in the middle of the room that neither one of you wanted to point out, and it took Dave Adams at the end of that 10 minutes to passionately go after you, go after the issue and after you in a sense, to bring it up. I shame on you a little bit, and I hope you take that with the passion that I have. I appreciate what you do here. I think, though, that you could have, in a 1-minute introduction conversation, explained that there are expenses on this July 4th list of expenses that I don't agree with. They were paid for by a credit card. I want to move to approve everything but these expenses, or approve these expenses with the idea that these things need to be discussed and more information needs to come out. Instead, there was 10 minutes of dancing around it and even saying, oh, I would never use a credit card, and putting yourself almost up on a pedestal to push him down and to beat Dave down.
Thank you.
I believe you knew what you were doing going into that meeting. Now, with that said, I appreciate your service, and if I meet any of you on the street privately, or I want to shake your hand and thank you again for your service. I have no personal malice towards you. Thanks again.
Thank you. Any other items for call to the public? Thank you. Seeing none, we'll close the call to the public. We appreciate the comments that have been shared this evening. A couple of the items that were raised asking for specific follow-up, including that of Mr. Sunloff, we will refer that. The question that was raised about traffic, we do have a traffic calming pattern. That being said, we probably need to decide if traffic accidents, maybe elevate that a little quicker than maybe that pattern. So we will ask staff to follow up with Mr. Sunloff. That would also fall under Councilmember Page's department that he works with. And so between staff and Councilmember Page, we'll follow up offline with Mr. Sunloff. So thank you. The next item on our agenda is annexation of approximately 13.42 acres of property at approximately 750 North Kays Creek Road.
This item was reviewed at the last meeting. After some discussion, it was tabled. Just a quick review. The property under consideration is highlighted here in yellow. It's on the west end of town off of Phillip Street. About 13 acres is proposed to be annexed. As was mentioned, this went through the annexation process some time ago, but due to some some technical errors, it was never able to be completed and recorded. The property's now gone through the process and is ready for annexation. A couple items that occur with annexation is that a zone designation needs to be appointed to the property. In the county, the zoning doesn't matter to the city, so when it's brought into the city, we have to assign one of our zones to it. Currently, the property is surrounded by R120 zoning. As you can see up in the highlighted area here, it's R120 on two sides. The requested zoning is the R1LD zone, which allows for up to 2 units per acre total density with a minimum of 12,000 square foot lots. The other frontages and setbacks all mimic the R120 zone. The idea was to allow a little more flexibility, but keep it appearance-wise from the street very similar to the R120. As was briefly mentioned, well, at the last meeting, it was recommended that the developer meet with the neighbors to address some of their concerns. There was basically 3 concerns that were brought up. One was a connection to the rail trail. That has been agreed to by the developer and shown on their most recent preliminary plat. The second item was there was discussion whether the zoning was appropriate. I believe that was discussed at the meeting. It was reported to me that there was some consensus that the LD zone would be acceptable. I'll see if that's confirmed. The third issue was regarding the subdivision plat itself, which has a extension of the existing road in the neighborhood up to a cul-de-sac and a stub road going back to the south, which would be extended when the additional property was developed. So there's feeling expressed that that should maybe be contingent on this development at this time. So there's really 2 actions tonight. The first is to annex the property, adopt the resolution annexing the property. That includes the zone designation. And then under separate agenda item is the preliminary plat approval. If, again, this is platted as the R1LD, if that zone is not assigned, then this plat would not be ready for approval.
Thank you for that update. At our last meeting, Councilmember Lee made a great suggestion to have the developer meet with those from the neighborhood. Maybe we could ask if there's a representative from Symphony Homes that would maybe like to give an update on that meeting from their perspective, and then we'll yield a few moments maybe to a few of those from the neighborhood. But we're not opening another public hearing per se, but would certainly appreciate some perspective from the neighborhood's side as well. So please.
Thank you. I'm Russ Wilson with Symphony Homes. Pertaining to the annexation and zoning, Bruce Robinson, he was here with me last time from Symphony Homes. He was able to attend a meeting with the homeowners last Wednesday night over in the old farm at Case Creek subdivision. After a little bit further discussion and a more thorough review of the R1LD zone versus the R120 zone, I think that the overall consensus from the residents was that the LD zone would be would yield a better layout and a better flow for the subdivision with the constraints that were presented. So I think the meeting went well as far as that goes, and I can answer questions or give some more comments pertaining to the plat approval when we get to that. Do you have any questions for me right now?
Council?
Not on the rezone, I don't think.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. McIntyre? No, the wrong one, sorry. I was trying to remember I'm sorry, Mrs. Christensen, thank you.
Okay, Katharina Christensen, and I am speaking on behalf of my neighbors. Unfortunately, we have a wedding in the neighborhood this evening and a lot of people out of town given the holiday. However, the meeting did go, and it was productive in part. But if you will recall from our presentation, our main contention is the road, the access to Phillips Street, and that's not even been mentioned. What happened at the meeting regarding that is that Mr. Robinson from Symphony Homes indicated he was trying to get a hold of Jack Robbins, the seller, and had been unsuccessful despite trying each day. We have yet to have a conversation with the seller, Jack Robbins. We would like the opportunity as neighbors to collectively meet with him. We've reached out to him in a variety of ways, and we'd like to do that because Mr. Robinson essentially expressed dismay that they weren't able to negotiate that, but maybe on behalf of the neighborhood that could happen. And there was even discussions about, there is the dirt road, some of the pictures that were indicated in the presentation, there is a dirt road already on his property. Mr. Robinson went out with neighbors and walked that road and proposed even seeing if he could have an easement or construction access, because that's a huge safety concern with all the trucks that will be coming into the neighborhood. That hasn't happened, so that's kind of an illusory issue. We'd like to hammer that out. So we're asking for some additional time as neighbors to approach the seller because the developer has been unsuccessful at doing that, and express our concerns. This is a huge traffic concern. Mr. Robinson did explain that he had consulted a traffic study, and this will add 260 cars to our neighborhood, to our road. And that's a huge concern with what we detrimentally relied upon, what we were promised when we purchased this property. If you will recall from the plat map that was shown, when we purchased this lot, it was under a different developer, and it was 8 homes. And whereas they've indicated that the R1LD versus the R120, Mr. Robinson came to the meeting and showed kind of in red what the area would look like carved into an R120, and it wasn't as pretty, granted, and it's a difference of 1 home. So when they talk about consensus, you're right, when you're comparing apples, R1LD to R120, you can look at it and you say, okay, it's a matter of 1 home, but you have to realize too that when we purchased, it was to be 8, and so this is very disappointing for all of us. So I don't know that we are struggling so much with the zoning as they've presented it, but our main issue is that road, and we'd like the time to reach out to him. We're not happy. I'm sure that there have been emails provided to city council members of people who couldn't be in here. There isn't really a general consensus about the zoning, but that's where we are. So Mr. Robinson also made some promises about safety, a safety plan kind of being put in place, street sweeping, etc., signs in the neighborhood, speed bumps. So some things were thrown out, but none of that has been hammered out. And we'd like the opportunity to do that. Maybe we'll have better luck with Mr. Robbins. We really feel that he's getting all the gain, and our children, the burden's on us with the traffic. And I would just remind you that Destination Homes, the Hill Farm subdivision, is putting in 44 homes to the west of us. And so that's where we get the 260 cars that are going to be filling up our city streets. So that's where we are. I don't know if you have any questions for me as a neighbor of the group.
Any questions right now, council? We may have some, if not.
Okay. We'd request August 18th, so you would meet every 2 weeks. We've not been successful. Mr. Robbins spends a considerable time out of town, and that's been the difficulty, catching him at home. So if we could maybe table this until the next city council on the 18th instead of the 4th. That would be helpful for the neighbors.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yes, please.
I do have a little follow-up. It's probably more of a plat issue, but I was able to reach Mr. Robbins yesterday and have a discussion with him. The first thing that I asked him about was having a possible construction access coming through his property. I told him we would come in and we would gravel a construction access for maybe not all, but a good majority of the construction vehicles that would be going in and out of the subdivision, and he was completely opposed to it. I followed up with the next question about providing a road, a right-of-way through there. And once again, he was completely opposed to that. He really didn't give me any reasons. He just said he won't do it. So that's where he stands. As far as Bruce told me a little bit about what he is proposing as far as safety goes. He's proposing to put up construction signs at the entrances of the subdivisions, 15 miles per hour, make sure the construction vehicles are going slow through the subdivision with all of the kids, and the possibility of speed bumps. I don't know how the city feels about speed bumps, but that's another possibility as well. So those are just a couple items.
Thank you.
I can follow up rebuttal on that. So that's why we like the opportunity, because maybe some pressure from the neighbors. We've got family members that have promised to speak with him about it as well. We'd like the opportunity to explore that, because that road is the main contention, and it's truly our safety concern for this neighborhood.
Mr. Wilson, could you speak to that? I mean, I think we need to have the deliberation here on the council as to whether or not whether it's tabled again. But I suppose that deliberation would be slightly different if your approach was, I know you already waited since the last meeting. If that doesn't inhibit your plans, does it? I know we're getting late in the season, so perhaps that causes some problems. That maybe you could just speak to that August 18th date, that request from the neighborhood.
Yeah, I think there are two separate issues here. I think there's the annexation and zoning, and then there's the plat approval. In regard to the plat approval, I think if the city wanted us to get a traffic study done, we're happy to do that. After looking, I did a lot of research. I went throughout the whole city, and I found subdivisions, and I printed off maps. I can show them to you if you want to see them. Just subdivisions throughout the city that I counted up the amount of homes and how many accesses these subdivisions have. Bruce Robinson, the last time, mentioned our Symphony Homes Mountain Vistas subdivision, and I counted up the amount of homes in that subdivision. There are 184 lots off of 2 accesses. That's a lot, significantly more traffic than this development with the same amount of access, two accesses. That particular subdivision has 4 or 5 stub streets that will go in the future when neighboring properties are developed. There's Boynton Place. There's 56 lots on 1 access. That's more than we have. Flint Meadows subdivision, 36 lots off 1 access, and a lot of these are very similar layouts to what we're presenting. As far as the subdivision layout goes, with coming in dead end cul-de-sac and stub streets. I've got several other examples. So I think if we're going to table, we should table with a purpose. We can have a traffic study done. As far as the annexation and zoning goes, I prefer that to be done tonight, if possible. So those are my thoughts.
Thank you. Mr. Thompson, remind us of the process.
Can I just make a statement on follow-up? I know. He pointed to those subdivisions, and we were directed to those subdivisions. But what you should know is that all of those subdivisions are off main roads. They're off 200 North, they're off Angel, Webb Lane. This is not a major road. And we tried to point that out at the last hearing and at the Planning Commission as well. So I just wanted you to be aware of that. And I understand that right now, as the plat is, it's a temporary stubbed road. And we've had discussions about leverage as well, about timing and so forth. We would like the opportunity to meet with him now before this is all approved. I think we're fine with the zoning and the annexation going through tonight, but the preliminary plat, if that can be tabled, so that we can address specifically that temporary stub road that is kind of, I don't know, wishful thinking, so, and a safety concern. So that's what we'd like to do.
Thank you. I guess my question for Mr. Thompson is, as far as process goes, the discussion about the road really doesn't have much to do with the annexation and the zoning. So that request to treat those separately and would be entirely appropriate as far as process goes. Is that accurate? Maybe the question
Yes.
for Mr. Scott or Mr. Thompson.
They're technically two different things. The one issue that kind of ties them together, once the zoning's adopted, a subdivision that meets all the criteria within that zone, we have some obligation to approve. Now, the stub road issue doesn't fall within that necessarily. That's discretionary. But if they brought in a subdivision that had no other concerns in the LD zone, you'd have some obligation to approve it. So just without warning, otherwise, you're certainly, they're technically two separate items.
They're two separate items, but if I understand what you're saying, that maybe the requirements, if the council decided to require the road in order to have the subdivision come in, that discretion more hinges on the annexation and rezone than it does on the plat.
No, stub road is a subdivision issue. If, for example, you didn't like, well, if you were approving everything based on this subdivision plat, all your discretion lies in the annexation and zone. You lose some of your discretion with the subdivision. So if you're fine with this plat, with the stub road issue to be resolved, then you're safe proceeding with the annexation and zone designation. If you're afraid that there's another LD zone subdivision plat that you may not like for whatever reason, you've lost some of your discretion. It's not a big deal. Probably it's not going to apply. There's only so many things you can do with this property. But you have discretion on zoning. You have less discretion on subdivision. That's all I'm trying to point out.
Thank you. Council, discussion, thoughts on direction you'd like to head?
Logistically or legally, potentially, what is the reality? I mean, that Mr. Robbins, the property owner, we've talked about a couple of different names here, Robbins and there's Robinson, so make sure we're talking about it's Mr. Robbins, the property owner, selling to Symphony. Apparently has been contacted, even as yesterday, did you say? And is not inclined to, apparently, to be willing to have the road or some kind of access road for construction off of Phillips directly into the property. Legally, I don't know that there's really anything that can be done from our perspective to force that to happen. I mean, we could require it and make it a requirement, but effectively that kills the subdivision, I believe, if that's the case, if he's not going to allow. We can't force him to build a road across his property. Correct?
That would be correct, unless you're willing to condemn it to accommodate development, which we've never done that or even approached it.
Right, yeah.
So the question then comes back is that critical enough to deny the subdivision, or would you approve it based on other factors? And that would boil down to that question at that point.
Yeah. Councilor Carnes?
Thank you. I would just make a comment that I agree with that once it's zoned, perhaps, but I didn't ever like that. There are several things I didn't like about the way this was characterized. I actually think the subdivision is very well designed, and I love the fact that there's going to be an access road to the trail for not only the new residents, but also existing residents without having to go up Phillips Street to get to the DNRG trail there. Having said that, I don't think the issue was ever an owner being forced to put a road in. And I speak specifically of the Tyler Estates subdivision, which I should point out at the beginning was different than this, in that there were many more homes and there was access to school issue. And so I think it was more important. That was delayed for about 2 years and was not rezoned because of the access road. And I just looked up because I just wanted to see in the code, but it's very clear in Title 10, Chapter 9A, Section 102, that governments have brought, that local government councils have and county commissions have broad authority to interpret what's appropriate in granting a zone, a particular zone or not. And also in case law, and there's a specific section in the code that also says the courts cannot really question or will not question the decision made on a zoning issue unless it's basically not well grounded. Those are my words. So you can have almost any reason, and there's a long list of prescribed reasons for not granting a zone. As long as it's not unreasonable or capricious. So what do those terms mean? So I don't think it was ever about forcing anyone to put in a road, but it was whether it met the conditions that the council were, that the council would think was appropriate before granting the zone. Otherwise, the zone is not granted. So no one is forcing anyone. If the zone is not granted, that's not forcing someone to put in a road. That's just keeping the current status of the property. So I wanted to make that point. And also there was comments made about cut-through. Clearly this is not a cut-through issue, and I did have a conversation with Bruce Robinson, I believe it is, and he acknowledged that fact, that it's not a cut-through, and in fact, you know, would probably distribute traffic better to have the third access point. I would prefer to have that access point, and here's the other part of it though. I don't think that in this particular subdivision, while it's annoying to have construction vehicles, I know I've been through in many parts of the city when construction is occurring, including in my own. One of the subdivisions mentioned was Flint Meadows with the 36 homes and a single access point. And sometimes when you're doing the numbers, the distribution of traffic, or even with equestrian estates, for example, where there was a lot of construction vehicles there, and I spent some time there, have some friends there, and noticed that, and it is annoying to have those lined along the street. In this case, that would not be the case, though. But really, the coming and going is probably a, you know, it's not like there's a consistent flow of traffic, and I think, you know, in my assessment with the number of homes there, the number of homes that are being built, that in my mind, when I was hoping for an access road, it was more of a convenience because it is a shorter route for the new homes, it distributes traffic better, but as far as a safety concern, and this is just my assessment from my experience on the Planning Commission, I don't think it's any more of a safety concern than any other construction project in the city that use the same roads in existing subdivisions to complete a subdivision. I've been in 2 or 3 different subdivisions now where I was like the first house or the last house in the row, and then all the other houses were built down the street with construction vehicles coming and going. And so any vehicle is a safety concern, right? Because a child could run out in front of that vehicle and be hurt. And very sadly, there's 30 years I've been here, there's been a handful of cases where that's happened on 200 North and one in Hess Farms and so on. But I don't know that by granting this zoning and plat as is, that it represents in any way an exceptional safety concern, or that there's more traffic flow out of the subdivision than in other places. So in looking at my reasoning, the preference, if I were a resident, to have a shorter route and to be more efficient in getting in and out probably doesn't rise the level of overcoming the other positives from having this subdivision go in. So with that, I'll close my comments.
Thank you. Anyone else? Council?
I just want to ask Mrs. Christensen something real quick. So let's say that Mr. Robbins does not get persuaded to sell that to open the road at this time. And the plat map does show that at any time that is sold, it will turn into a road going out. So it's a matter of time. So if he does not agree to it, are you going to tell the council you don't want to go ahead with this subdivision at all? Is that your thoughts, or what?
Our thought is that we would like the opportunity to speak with him. So, I mean, clearly this is a business deal between Symphony Homes and Jack Robbins, but we're his neighbors, and we're all collectively around him. His nephew is next door and has promised to speak with him as well. We want to share our concerns with him. He has been silent. He has been absent from all of this. So, you know, our understanding, deal hasn't gone through yet. The 2.6 million hasn't funded until November, as our understanding. So we want the time and the opportunity to speak with him about this. If you know, we weren't present on this conversation about the construction road and those things, so we would like the opportunity to check on that and come back. We're talking 4 weeks. If you will recall, Mr. Robinson indicated that this would be a 2-year construction project and in probably several more years to absorb these homes because of the cost of these homes. These are on the higher end. So this is, you know, we're looking at a 4-year window essentially, right, to build and absorb these. We would like the opportunity of 4 weeks to sit down and meet with him. If it's no, we'll come back and tell you that, but we'd like the effort to do that. We've tried, and he's tried it, and you know, this is news to us that he had a conversation, this gentleman here, Mr. Wilson's had a conversation with him as of yesterday. So that's what we'd like. We'd ask you, given what Mr. Thompson indicated, then table it till August 18th, both issues, the zoning annexation and the plat map.
Ms. Christensen, just one more question. And I hate to say a hypothetical, but let's say that the owner does not agree to have an access road for construction at this time. How do you weigh that? I mean, the fact that as these homes are developed over a 4-year period, more homes will be sending traffic down Case Creek Road. How do you weigh that against having an access to the trail? Or do you have a sense for that with your neighbors too? Would you feel comfortable representing sort of what some of the comments have been that you've heard?
I'm not sure your question's clear to me.
I
think it's a done deal that there's going to be access to the trail. That's the revised preliminary plat, right?
Right, but of
They
course,
put in the trail.
but until they actually build that place and the access, then there wouldn't be access to the trail. So in other words, if the zone were to be denied until the whole property were developed and the access road were put in permanently, then that could be a delay of several years where the access to the trail is not provided to the community there.
Well, that's obviously a concern because of the you know, for us, it's a concern because our children and families are on Phillips, and it's got that huge bow that right there, the bend at Robbins' property. So yes, we'd have to navigate that. But for us, it's, you know, 80 trips. We've talked about numbers, right? We talked about that at least there would be 80 cars coming in and out of our roads. And these aren't meandering roads because these roads were put in before this developer wanted to come in. This isn't like Mountain Shadows or Mountain Vistas, or whatever it's called, excuse me, but those meandered. This is a straight shot, and it's a wishbone. And so, weighing those two, we would rather have the opportunity. We want the road. That is our primary. We want access to Phillips for this subdivision, for those 80 round trips that would happen any given day.
Thank you. And just to springboard off this and make one other mention, I don't know if it would rise to this level, but with the traffic calming policy that we have in Kaysville, if when these homes start to get constructed, if there are complaints for residents that the traffic is, you know, approaching the levels where you're concerned about it, then we could call for a traffic calming study to see what measures might be taken, because I take your point that there's a straight road on Case Creek Road that could, you know, could encourage speeding, I guess, and that's an issue all over the city in various places, but.
If the city were to consider a traffic study, that's fine. Mr. Wilson indicated there should be a purpose for it. Our purpose is to be able to meet with Mr. Robbins and see what we can negotiate. If you wanted to ask for a traffic study, fine. I know he's preliminary looked at one, but again, it's his hired expert.
No,
right?
not a
So-
traffic study. So traffic calming, we actually have a policy that, and this would not come into effect until once construction begins and homes are going in to reevaluate. If there are complaints at that time, if the neighbors feel that it's excessive, then you have an avenue to go through the city and say, we'd like a traffic calming study to be done, and that could be evaluated to see if there's a problem.
Okay, so that's the first that I've heard of that. So that would
that's
be,
why I mentioned it.
That could be
yeah.
something that we can address with our neighbors as well. Back to Councilwoman Lee about the eventual sale. This property is held in trust, and we don't know the provisions of the trust and who that would be going to, and if and when they would develop the property. So with your question about at the temporary stub road someday becoming a road with development, we don't know that will ever happen. So we don't have control on that.
Some of those questions, the questions that were raised regarding, I don't know how the other council feels, traffic study. I mean, since I've been on the council, they always say don't do math in public because you'll probably do it wrong. But if we're really looking at 80 trips a day and we just talk about a 12-hour window, just from 7 to 7, that's 6.6 cars an hour, which is like one additional car every 10 minutes. I don't see that doing a traffic study is going to probably yield us much more information on the amount of homes that are being built. I think the real question comes down to whether or not the council, and that was part of the reason why I had the question for Mr. Wilson earlier, is if time is not of the essence, if you'd like to get this buttoned up, but you're not necessarily trying to install improvements, then certainly it might make the neighbors feel like they had the opportunity. Now, we've already given them one table and one extension. Another month is probably not the norm that we've normally done in the city council, but certainly if they wanted that opportunity. That being said, if the council's okay with saying, hey, look, we're all about giving you the opportunity to make your case to the property owner, but if he says no, we're going to approve it anyway, then there's probably less worry about doing the rezone and the annexation of the zone tonight, because if we're simply saying the council feels that it's not enough of a safety impact to say no to the subdivision if the road's not built, then go ahead and rezone and annex it. And if Symphony is open to it, then give the neighbors a little more time to at least feel like they had the opportunity. If the council feels like absolutely not, it's either road or nothing, then either vote on it tonight or table it. I think that's really what you got to decide. Other comments from council?
Yeah, I guess, before us, it really is two different issues here. We have that annexation, and then we have the subdivision. I'm actually inclined to approve the annexation. And, with the zoning of R1 LD, the problem we have is a lot of times the land, the way that it's laid out and how much acreage there is determined what you can do with half-acre lots versus others. And I think on this particular piece of property, I think it does work well for an R1 LD. And I just think that that's probably the best route to go. And if, and it sounds like to me that Symphony Homes has mentioned that they're okay probably with, giving the owners a little bit more time to be able to see if they can talk to Mr. Robbins and see what he has to say. And I don't have a problem with that part of it to be tabled, to allow additional time on that. And because I think it's important, and I really sense that Symphony Homes is doing what they can to be good neighbors on this and trying to work through these issues the best they can. I do know that there's several things that you can do once the subdivision is started to help out on the traffic and different things like that in construction, because that is a concern that people have. I know on my particular company, on several subdivisions, they have certain rules as part of the condition of us working in that subdivision that we would have to talk to our employees about on traffic concerns and different things. And I think maybe a sign in the subdivision while during construction would be an appropriate thing as well. So I don't know if there's any more discussion, but I would like to make a motion that we approve the annexation of approximately 13.42 acres of property, and also approve the zoning of R1LD on that property.
I'll second that.
Thank you. We have a motion by Councilmember Page and a second by Councilmember Lee to approve the annexation of 13.42 acres of property and assign the zone of LD, or R1LD, thank you. Further discussion? Thank you.
I think just to make sure everybody understands, we kind of went over this 2 weeks ago, but the zone designation of R1LD is somewhat of a newer zoning designation in Kaysville, but it provides more flexibility as far as the total lot sizes, but it does not allow for any more density. So the overall density within the subdivision will be the same as though it were half-acre lots, everything. It's approximately 10 acres for the subdivision. There's only 20 lots in the subdivision. So the R1LD just provides for some flexibility in terms of how the lots are configured from a size perspective. There's some lots in the proposed, again, we're talking about the annexation, but just to make sure that everybody understands that the zone designation there doesn't change the density at all for that. But I agree, I think it's an appropriate zoning designation. I like it because it does provide developers that flexibility, that every lot isn't exactly the same as the one next to it. Some are larger, some can be smaller, but nothing in this particular proposed subdivision smaller than 15,000 square feet. So that's more than a third of an acre.
Was the lot size and zoning, was that the issue, ma'am? Or was it more the accesses?
The access.
Okay, I just got a little confused there. I guess the only thing I'd had to add is growing up in the industry, it'd be great to have those construction accesses, but it just was never possible, it seemed like, you know, and it is kind of a tough thing with children and whatnot. I live on a really busy road. We'd love to have speed bumps. You know, it's nothing like the road you live on, and it's really wide too, so it's kind of the Autobahn, but it's tough. You know, it'd be great if those could always be provided, if that could be something that, you know, that could accommodate every subdivision. It's hard because these right-of-ways do, you know, developers and, you know, builders do have the right to use these right-of-ways, you know, to access their properties where they are public property, and we only have so much jurisdiction over them. The other thing, Sunset Point, where Endeavor Elementary is, you know, just kind of adding to what he said, but there's a little bit of a difference down there. They only have one, you know, well, they have two, so 2 ins, 2 outs. There's one on Burton Lane, and there's one on Shepherd Lane. They have 157 lots in there. There's maybe 10 left to be built on. And they also have Endeavor Elementary, which gets really busy. So this is no way, shape, or form a rebuttal, ma'am, to you at all. It's maybe more a sense of understanding for you that perhaps once this, you know, if and when it does go in, you might enjoy these neighbors, you might like them, you might not even realize their cars coming in and out of the neighborhood, and they might have as much respect towards you, you know, as you would like them to for your children down there on Kays Creek Drive or whatnot. So it is difficult. I guess where my inclination would lead at this point would be, you know, if Symphony Homes would offer, it sounds like the council's, you know, ready to vote for it all, ma'am, but I would like to throw you a bone back and just ask Symphony Homes to give this council their word that you will indeed give her that opportunity, you will meet with him, because if there's an opportunity there, then so be it. You know, and if there's an opportunity on the next 100 subdivisions that the city does to provide a dirt road for construction access, so be it. Why would we be against that? But we can't necessarily enforce that. That's the hard part. I mean, I don't know Symphony Homes at all. I've seen their product, and I think it's great. And from their presentation last week, I think they're men of their word. You know, they met with you once, and if you trust them enough that they give you your word that they'll meet with you and make that attempt, I think that's a pretty fair deal. Not really, huh? Well, I don't know. I'm not the authority to allow you to comment, so.
I'm here for my neighbors, so I'm representing them as well. And the opportunity is to meet with Mr. Robbins, Mr. Robbins' son.
I think that.
Wait, Robbins
got
is
that.
the farmer, and Robbins, that's what I mean. If they'll give you their word that they will meet with you and Mr. Robbins, in a cottage meeting, but, I think according to, to state law, this is going to move forward. It has to, or else there is some potential huge exposure on their side. They do have private property rights as owners, but we are definitely pushing back as hard as we can, I think. What's a spec, Andy, on cars? Is it like 2,000 a day or something? That's the standard?
Yeah, and I could do this traffic study right now. I've seen enough of similar situations. Typically, an average home in the United States produces 10 trips a day. Utah is slightly higher than that, maybe as high as 12. So in 20 lots, it's going to generate upwards of 240 trips per day. About 10% of those will be in the peak hour. So the worst case is this 20 lots would generate 24 trips in the peak hour, usually 5 to 6. You add the other approximately 40 lots that are already there, that's 600-700 total trips in that subdivision between two roads. The standard is it's not a capacity issue. Those roads have capacity for upwards of 10,000 cars. It's a level of comfort for a residential neighborhood. That's deemed to be, depends who you ask, usually between about 2,000 and 2,500 cars per day. With all the cars, including the ones that are there and the new ones, we're looking at maybe 700 trips a day distributed on the existing two roads. It really doesn't even approach the limit of acceptability for a residential street. That was probably a big answer for a little question.
No, it works. And down at Sunset Point, I know that people can't even get out of their driveways in the morning because there's so much school traffic. They're barricaded in, literally. So it could be really, really worse, guys. Just pray that the school district doesn't plop a school right there on the rest of the farm. So.
All right.
Yeah.
So the item that we're considering, we have two separate motions. One is for the annexation and assignment of zone. The other one, which we'll address in a minute, is the plat. We have a motion and a second, so we'll call for a vote. Council Member Garn, will you start a vote for us, please?
Aye.
We're approving both bullets, right?
Just one?
No, just one.
Just the annex.
annexation and the LD, the change in zoning.
Okay, where there's no one here contesting the LD, it's an aye.
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 Thank you. Voting is unanimous. And then part of the same discussion is item number 6, which is the preliminary plat approval for Streams Edge subdivision, which was also previously tabled. This would probably be more applicable for the road discussion. Council, would someone care to make a motion on this item?
Yeah, I make a motion that we table this item.
I'll second that.
I think the motion by, I think I know where you're going. The motion by Councilmember Lee and a second by Councilmember Garn to table the item. Did you want to have a date specific?
Yes, August. Oh, sorry, the motion maker.
Motion, yeah.
To table it and bring it back up in our August 18th meeting? Is that the one?
Yes.
Is that the next one?
No, that's in 2 weeks.
That's in 4 weeks.
Right. They want extra time.
Yeah, if you just table it, my understanding is it comes back up on the very next meeting.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
unless we put a date on it.
Yes.
So.
And I'm fine with that as the second.
Thanks. So a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Mr. Wilson, we kind of left that a little bit open-ended before we call for a vote on that table the 18th. You're welcome to make an additional comment if you'd like to comment or.
In our city council meeting, is there one in 2 weeks?
There's one in 2
There
weeks.
is.
There's one in 2 weeks.
I prefer that one because August 18th is pushing us towards our deadlines, our closing deadlines, and we also have a construction schedule already. So if you consider that.
And you've waited 2 weeks graciously.
Yeah. Mr. Robbins, he leaves town a lot, but I believe he's going to be in town more often the next couple of weeks. He's out of town in Denver right now. I actually caught him on his cell phone while he's away, but I believe he's going to be back the next couple of weeks. And I'm happy to arrange the meeting. We can go sit down with the neighbors. I think I already know what his answer is going to be, but we can at least have a discussion about it.
Put a steering wheel lock on his motorhome. So he
Yeah.
can't
There we
keep
go.
it down.
So I guess the only comment would be if we're sure that by, what's the other one, August 4th, I guess if by August 4th, do you think a meeting can be arranged with Mr.
I think so,
Robinson?
yeah. He wanted me to call him tomorrow morning to let him know how the meeting went, so I'll make the call tomorrow and we'll set it up.
Okay.
If they're
I
not
can
able to do
amend
that, you're certainly allowed to table it again next
Table it
time.
again,
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so let's amend that.
If he's going to assist us, I think that would be helpful, because the additional time is because he's traveling so much and difficult to get hold of. If we can agree that if we aren't able to have a meeting before then, we can table it to May 10th.
I'd agree with that.
Well, if Councilmember Lee amends her motion to table it just till our next meeting, then we would need new action to table it again to the 18th. At that meeting, we really couldn't table it, and then if it doesn't work out, table it again. So are you amending your motion to the next meeting?
Yes, I'd like to amend that motion that it's tabled until the August 4th meeting.
And I agree.
You second?
You agree?
And I second. I amend the second.
All right, we have a motion and an amended motion and a second. Any further discussion? Councilmember Adams, you start a vote.
Aye.
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 Thank you. Voting is unanimous. Thank you, everyone. Next on our agenda is interlocal agreement with Fruit Heights on fire EMS services. Mr. Scott.
Hopefully you've had a chance to review this document. This is something we presented to Fruit Heights several weeks ago. They haven't been able to agendize this as of yet, but they have discussed it, and I think they're having their legal counsel look it over as well. While it's on our agenda tonight, I personally don't think it's probably appropriate for us to take any action on it, just because I believe that it might come back to us with some red lines. So if we were to approve what you see in your packet tonight, and then they make some changes, we'd obviously have to do that again. So it's just maybe more for your information, and just to make special arrangements that you look at this would be our preference tonight. I think we're close, and I think some extra communication on the mayor's part lately has proved very fruitful in maybe repairing a slightly frayed relationship. So things are going well there.
Would tabling it to the next meeting be sufficient, or do we just indefinitely?
We don't have to do anything right now.
I think tabling to the next meeting would be good. We have made some commitments to them to do this in a timely manner, so I believe it's in their best interest as it is ours to move forward with this as quickly as possible.
2 weeks will
So
be sufficient
I think
time.
it should.
Okay, well then I'll make a motion that we table the interlocal agreement with Fruit Heights on fire and EMS services until our next regular scheduled council meeting.
I'll sec-
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. I'll
Thank you.
second.
Thank you. A motion by Councilmember Snell and a second by Councilmember Lee, as outlined. Further discussion? Mr. Grant?
Thank you. Yeah, I just have one question on that. I know at some point we were talking about the way that the allocation of costs of the fire department were allocated between Kaysville and Fruit Heights. It seems like one of the things to look at was the amount of service calls in each city. Apparently that was looked at. I just want to make sure my understanding is correct from before. That was looked at, and there really wasn't as much of a difference as was thought. Now the valuations, I'm assuming that means, or the assessment, I'm assuming that means the property tax valuation will be the allocation factor.
That's correct. And maybe the only slight thing that also was adjusted was we took a different look at the capital expenditures of that department and tried to better allocate the capital expenditures that may affect Fruit Heights as opposed to affecting the entire city of Kaysville. So
Thank you. And you're pointing out that the calculation to actually do the allocation is a little more involved than just what's in the agreement.
It is, and really in meeting with Brandon, their city manager, he expressed that they had less of a problem with the actual money itself and more a difficulty in taking the time for us to present this to them in a timely manner so they can then budget for it and make some necessary appropriations. They are very open to paying their fair share, and I think that's important that you understand that.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So are we saying the calls are almost balanced? Is that what you're saying between two cities?
They don't balance, but they don't.
1,100 to 280 or something.
Right, but they actually end up in almost the same scenario as an evaluation of by property tax. So it's almost like that we're in the same boat. It didn't change any of the numbers drastically. No, they're not 50-50 by any stretch, but in what they pay, it's almost a balancing act with the number of calls.
Yeah, and of course, the reason they're not 50-50, I just meant that they're fair based on some allocation method, whether that's valuation or number of people or whatever, because obviously there's a higher population in Kaysville, and so if it were 50-50, that would mean you're having a lot of fires per home, and there's a lot more structures in Kaysville, so.
Also, I think Chief Larkin had expressed a little bit of concern with sometimes when he's not there, that some people, whoever's in charge will write down that it's a Kaysville fire when it actually is a Fruit Heights fire or an EMS or whatever. Not knowing where the border is, I think Chief Larkin knows very well where that is, but many of our guys don't. Of course, I don't either. But that can be a further challenge that he's trying to iron out. So.
Thank you. So,
well, one thing that I do like about doing this, I think that it's opening up the communication with Fruit Heights, and I think that's probably the biggest issue that we're facing.
That is.
I absolutely agree.
So I congratulate you that you actually started this process, and they feel like that they're being listened to, and I think that's probably the most wonderful thing about this.
Thank you. I completely agree. I think it's been a good thing, net positive. What's that?
I say, of course you agree.
Of course I agree. Why would I disagree with that?
thank you. Just one other thing I might, while I agree that it makes sense if Fruit Heights is going to review the contract and they may have a few red line items, perhaps our approving it tonight just to have to reconsider it again may not be logistically. Yeah. Eventually, someone has to approve it first.
It's true. That's fine to do.
And my only hesitation about just tabling it is I do think, based on the conversations we've had with Fruit Heights, there is some interest to say, okay, is this the agreement? And you, Shane, or you, Mayor, are talking about that these are the terms. How do we know that your council's really interested? And so that,
that's true.
The only concern I would have is maybe the mixed signal of we're tabling this and so eventually we have to do it. So I just find a table, but it might be good to know if since you've had a chance to read it, if there are any glaring concerns. I would hate for them to read into our not passing it tonight for any reason.
With that in mind, Mayor, if you're sort of inviting a substitute motion, we could stipulate in the motion that this is subject to, it's a little bit redundant because they'd have to sign it and approve it, before it becomes an agreement. That's the nature of an agreement. But we're understanding of the fact that they need to review it, and we will be open to their input or whatever.
If you so desired, you could make a motion to approve the agreement subject to Fruit Heights approval, and if you like it as is, and if they say, well, we have a few things we want to tweak, then we bring it back, and at least that would send I feel like letting them know, hey, if you accept it as is, it's good. And sure, if you have some tweaks, we're happy to accommodate those too. But I do think there's some importance to letting them know that we're serious about
I agree with
what we're
that.
offering.
I agree, yeah.
So with that, I'll make that substitute motion that we approve the agreement going to Fruit Heights City to be considered by their city council.
I'll second that.
Thank you. I have a substitute motion by Councilmember Garn, a second by Councilmember Snell. Any further discussion? Councilmember Lee, will you start a vote for us, please?
Aye.
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 Aye. Thank you. Next on our agenda is 61 acres of property located at 42 North Angel Street from A1 to RA. Mr. Thompson.
Yes, Mr. Clifton owns the property highlighted here on Angel Street. It's about 1.5 acres. He has a home on Angel Street. He would like to be able to build a home for one of his children in the back part of the property. In the current A1 zoning, he doesn't have enough property for an additional home, so he's requested to rezone the property to RA, which is pretty predominant in the area, which would allow him to split it into 2 lots, which we'll see sometime in the future, we anticipate. But the action tonight is just to review the rezone from A1 to RA. It was unanimously approved by the Planning Commission with no public comment.
Okay. I'll make a motion that we approve the rezone request for 1.61 acres from A1 to RA.
I'll second that.
Thank you. There's a motion by Councilmember Snell and a second by Councilmember Lee for approval as outlined. Any further discussion? Councilmember Snell, will you start a vote?
Aye.
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 Thank you. The voting is unanimous. Next on our agenda is consideration of Utah LTAP Transportation Asset Management System, TAMS. Got a few acronyms in there.
TAMS, lovely TAMS. If you remember, this is something that we discussed at our budget meeting back in May. I think there's some different opinions about the status of roads, I think all over the place, not only in our community but in others. As Mr. Thompson and I have reviewed this plan, we feel like this will be a very good thing for the city. It came in a little bit higher than I'd hoped. It's about $10,000, maybe just a little bit more. However, it's a very thorough report. I think you'll be very pleased with what comes out of it. They make recommendations for anywhere from financial obligations to which roads should have attention first. It's really something you can point to and say this was a recommendation from a body that's very skilled in this area. In talking to Dean, I believe that this is something that can be absorbed in this year's budget. If nothing else, we would maybe have to make a budget amendment, but we think that this is something that we can just absorb in what was budgeted in the professional and technical area of public works. So,
Remind us what the time frame would be if you gave them the go-ahead and start.
they'd like to start in August, so they would like to do it right away. We should be able to get something back this calendar year very easily. So I let them know that tentatively we were talking about this tonight, and I wanted to let them know right away. So should be able to get something back.
How is that? How user-friendly is the report? Is it by address or by street name, and then you would go down and look at a street and then say it's this condition?
It's exactly what it does.
This grade, basically.
It gives you an evaluation from 1 to 20. I think it's actually. Do you remember how is it 1 is the best number and 20 is the worst? I can't remember if it's. There might be the opposite of that, but it does evaluate those roads. Each one gets assigned a valuation, and then the recommendation kind of justifies what that valuation is and why it's important to hit this road this year, this road next year, and it's again probably something that Andy's aware of, but I think it would just have an outside set of eyes to look at these roads. As you as council members like to say that the road that's next to you is the worst road in Kaysville, this will just clear that all up. So we'll be able to tell who's right and who's wrong.
Yeah. Maybe this will be our opportunity to start. Oh, is the lottery against the law? Everybody could bet on that.
That's right.
And the majority of the folks come back who has the worst road, and then we'll find out.
I think at least 2 of you ought to do that, but you better do that offline, not in the public meeting.
Yeah.
And this is a one-time kind of a thing?
Yes.
Scott,
Mm-hmm.
Jane? This is, once we have the results of this, then obviously it gives us a snapshot in time of the condition of our roads.
That's true.
I believe that they do it initially and set up the program, and then they leave it to us to continue the program by doing additional assessment and then putting it into the computerized.
So it is a computerized program that
Oh,
they'll
yes.
give us.
Mm-hmm. And a full report. And they will actually come and present this report to future council meetings.
So as we make changes or as we start repairing, say the highest priority
Set it up
road.
and do the initial analysis, and then turn it over to us to continue the program in future years.
I see.
And there's probably some local knowledge that we will even tweak from the very, very beginning, just to
Will this take in consideration the infrastructure under the roads that will be happening to correspond with that report?
That I don't think it does, and I think that's probably one of the biggest concerns with that is that they don't have that. There might be some knowledge that they're able to get as they work with staff. They'll want some GIS data from us and some different things like that. And there might be ways that we can give them water line accesses or water line locations. So there might be some of that, but I'll bet that will be a significant limitation, so.
Yeah, I would just hate to repair or redo a road and the next year dig it up
Yep.
for a water line.
Yeah.
Well, just to follow up on that question a little bit, it's interesting that it's all underground, so I guess you could, I don't know how they make assessments on that, but you also have like probably some sort of list or dates of when various infrastructure were installed, and they probably have certain life, typical life, and maybe that could be looked at with Public Works and say, well, that water pipe is a main line, it's probably getting close to the end of, is that possible to coordinate that? Yeah.
Yep, and I think that's mostly done after, I think that's probably not in their report as much as, that's
Right.
probably where the rubber meets the road as far as Andy's
You
concerned.
take the data and then consider
correct.
your data and say, yeah.
Exactly.
I do have one other question on this too. It talks about the 168 centerline miles of paved streets in Kaysville that will be reviewed. But then there's a statement that says, should there be an increase in the miles of the streets to be inventoried and surveyed, an adjustment in the estimate will need to be made, which that begs the question, which streets will not be evaluated if there's still additional streets that could be, or is that just a standard template language they
I think
put?
that's exactly what it is. I think they're just covering themselves in case we sneak in a couple of miles that we didn't initially tell them about, but I think they're going off of our Class C designation, and if anything, we ought to be rounding up in Class C, not rounding down, because that's how we are funded there, so. I think it's just a standard. They may have been bitten before, but I don't know, to be honest with you, I don't know the answer, but I think you're right on.
Thank you.
They analyze infrastructure like curb, gutter, sidewalk, that'll play into the grade.
I think they mostly stick to roads. I don't think that they do, but do you have any idea?
I
I'm not
believe
sure.
this is strictly asphalt assessment.
Yeah. I don't think they do curb, gutter and sidewalk, but.
It'd be nice if that
Question.
could be incorporated into the program along with the report so that we could get an idea what we're dealing with on that aspect too.
Where our local knowledge can come into play.
Yeah. I was just going to say, I appreciate, Shane, you bringing this to the council. It seems like we've had the opportunity, or I did, and I think maybe another council member or two, maybe Susan, to a local contractor that was actually very aware of this, or road contractor that said, hey, this is something that other cities use, and it's a great way to track, so we appreciate you being aware of it and bringing it to the council.
I imagine the portions that UDOT controls of Main Street and 200 North and whatnot, those are not included.
That's correct, they're
Correct.
not.
Those were excluded from
Right.
this. That's good. Okay. Well, do you need a motion to adopt?
That's what I'd like to see. Yeah, it's an agreement between us.
Is it an agreement?
Mhm.
Okay. Well, I'll also move that we agree, or that we adopt the agreement with the Utah LTAP to provide us a transportation asset management program or system.
And I'll second that.
I think there's a motion by Councilmember Snell and a second by Councilmember Page for approval. Any further discussion? Councilmember Page, will you start a vote, please?
Aye.
Aye.
I love it, and I'm excited that the emphasis is putting on roadways, but I think I have an eye for what a roadway needs and doesn't need, so it's an A for the money.
Aye.
Did you vote?
Aye. All right.
Thank you.
That's right. I didn't vote.
Thank you. The motion carries 4-1. Next on our agenda is Kaysville City Code of Ethics and Conduct for Elected and Appointed Officials.
All right, well, let me begin. I think we need to probably explain a little bit of the process that we went through to come up with this ethics and conduct code. First of all, this has actually been in the works for about 3 months. And along with a lot of the other issues in the city from coming up with code, like for example, one of the other codes that we're looking at now is a procedure code. We've talked about that, the city procedures. And that's in the works. We're working on that as well. I think that this has been a great example of collaboration. We've had many people participate on this from professionals. We've actually had 4 different attorneys look at this. This process has been something that's been, we've gone through it many different times, a lot of different drafts, and taken a look at those each ones. And we got to the point that we figured this is probably a time to have a discussion on it and to see how the council feels about it, as well as have something in hand that we could actually give to the public so they could take a look at it as well. And so that's kind of where we're at. We appreciate so much, I do personally, of the people that's helped participate in this, that's been spending a lot of their time to help put this together, and I'd like to turn it over to the council for discussion.
I might recommend as we move through, whether or not you want, I think for as long as the document is, and I don't anticipate that we're going to adopt this evening, rather have a discussion on maybe some points, and then I could be wrong, I guess you may all want to adopt it, but I think the anticipation is to introduce it, provide it so that the public can have the opportunity to comment on it. But maybe we could just take a few moments, and Councilmember Page, I mean, I know you've coordinated some of this, but maybe just go in order of a few things that you'd like to maybe see addressed, or maybe a few things that stood out. I don't know if Shane wants to attempt to keep track of some of these comments,
Sure will,
but that might be how I at least recommend, or at least our initial round of discussion. So if there's, of course, you probably don't have much you want to add or say, hey,
No,
let me tell you what the tweaks, but maybe we'll start with Councilmember Snell.
Absolutely. I will echo the comments of Councilmember Page, that there have been a number of people that have been involved in this. From the council, primarily in the initial stages anyway, were myself, Mr. Garn, and Mr. Page. And there were other individuals. The Planning Commission, because they are referenced as part of this, they are appointed commissioners and sit in a body. So they are similarly involved, and they would be included in this policy, so they've given their feedback. There's been a lot of feedback. We've had assistance in the formatting and in the typing from a professional, someone who is actually very highly qualified, has written a number of state laws and agency codes, and in his career, and happens to be a Kaysville resident as well. I don't know that I have specific points that I want to point out. The copy that we have here is the most recent version that includes and incorporates, as you can see, as council members, as you're looking through it, there are certain sections that are underlined, which means those have been added, and there are certain sections or certain, either phrases or words or portions of words that are strike-through, so they have a line through them that's indicating that it's proposed to be removed and replaced with something else. Anyway, I think, as the public, it has been on the website, not for very long. I don't know when that was. Just today. It's been on the website for today and is available. I think Councilmember Garn posted it on Facebook as well, a link to it, so people were able to get to that. I just want to emphasize that, there's, as anybody reads through this, I think they should come away with the impression that this particular code of conduct, it doesn't incorporate much of anything that anyone would consider is not just common sense. And so, it is something that will apply equally to every member of this council. It will apply equally to every member of the Planning Commission. There's been some concerns raised, I know, in some of the feedback that's been given about retroactive application of these. There's a lot of law, a lot of case law in the United States in our history where ex post facto laws just simply prohibit that. And so the intent of this is to apply these conditions or these standards of conduct. Once they are approved, they go into effect going forward. So I think that's effectively what I would say. Now, the council has had multiple versions of this, you know, given the fact that we've gotten feedback from a number of different individuals over the course of the last number of days. So there's been several versions bandied about. The content and the substance of it is largely intact from the very first time that it was put out almost a week ago, whenever that was. So anyway, I have read through it. I've read through it extensively, having been involved from the get-go. So I don't know that I have anything else that I would apply or say specifically. We did, just as an FYI, and you can see it on your pages, you can reference, just for easy reference, if you have a question on a specific portion or a specific phrase or clause, reference the page number, and then on the left-hand margin there is a numbered sequence, so we can quickly get to the same page that we're all working on, if you would like to. So.
Thank you.
I'll turn it to you, Mayor.
I've got just a couple things that maybe stood out that I'm not necessarily have the right language, but I think might be worth at least considering. There was some items on page 9, on page 10, as it comes down to the section under filing a complaint of unprofessional conduct and penalties for engaging in unprofessional conduct. And as you got down to subsection I, it talks about if the council finds the official engaged in unprofessional conduct, a sanction or penalty has been imposed, that official shall have the right to request in writing that the mayor schedule a reconsideration of the matter by the city council and shall inform the mayor for the basis of request and review by the council. The mayor, on exercising the mayor's sole discretion, may deny the reconsideration or grant scheduled reconsideration before the council. And I might be reading into this maybe a little bit too much, but I sit on a commission on the mortgage commission for the state of Utah, and we recently had a training about due process, and saying that if someone comes before the commission and has a discussion and they don't like what the commission ultimately issued or handed down, due process affords them the opportunity to have someone else review that. And maybe I'm not reading this right, but the way I took that is, let's say that Councilmember Lee files a concern about Councilmember or about Councilmember Snell or something like that, and if the due process, if the right to appeal, if you will, comes back to the very body who issued it, that seems a little contradictory. If we have a member of the staff who files a grievance to their department head, and they come to the city council and we hold a hearing, we're the appeal body, and they don't like what we have to say, we know that the step beyond us is the district court. And so to me, as I read that, I kind of thought, if we're appealing to, if the council makes a decision and someone wants to appeal it, it doesn't seem maybe appropriate to appeal it to the very same body who issued it in the first place. So I would be interested in maybe understanding or looking at a maybe a more proper appeal, or at least someone to say, and we've got lots of attorneys that might comment on that. The other thing I guess I wanted to ask is with all of, as I understand, or so I've understand, there's a lot of attorneys and folks who have looked at this and commented on this, and I would be interested maybe, of course it costs us some money, but I just recall recently, I don't even remember what the issue was. Well, maybe it was in a closed meeting, but our own attorney made the comment that if you want to have David Church at the league review it, you're more than welcome to, because I would probably just call him and ask his opinion anyway. And I wonder if there's some value in having someone who really understands municipal law, where they really don't have to study it out, but actually just has it on his head and can read that and say, oh, you can't do that. Oh, you can't do that. Oh, that actually contradicts, and actually has that knowledge. There might be some value in having someone like that. But those are the two things. I noticed there was also a comment about eating up here, and I don't know if it's just a cruel joke that somebody put Hershey's bars up here on our, because I've grabbed it like 4 times in the meeting, and I put it back down because I recall reading that, and I didn't want to say, so anyway.
It hasn't passed yet.
Okay. In that case, I'll eat one.
And each of us has one.
Yeah. And there are some, the only other thing, there was a comment about, text messaging, and I agree with that. I don't think it's probably appropriate for me to be texting someone about the meeting or texting a council member, texting someone in the audience. That being said, I have a young family, and, I've had my phones beeped a couple of times, and I've peeked just to make sure that, it's not my family. And so I think there's probably an appropriate level to say we shouldn't be doing that during the meeting. But on the flip side, I don't want to feel, guilty for saying, oh, okay, all right, everybody's okay. So I think there's probably a little bit of a fine line there as well. Mm-hmm. Those are my thoughts, Councilmember Lee.
Yeah, I think that this code of conduct is entirely appropriate and long overdue. And my son is going to soon be made an officer in the military, and he will be governed by a military code of conduct. And you've heard the words that the conduct unbecoming an officer, and that will get him decommissioned, kicked out of the military, or in prison. And I think there's no reason why we can't have our own code of conduct. And so, but with that being said, in section 5, in items Q and R,
Page?
9, page 9. I know in the past we have had council members that like to do ride-alongs with the police officers or with the fire engines. And I just want to make sure, I think that's good, and I don't want this to get in the way, the wording in this. Yeah. If they go with them and they talk to them about what's happening, I don't want it to be prevented as far as, I don't want that to be considered interfering. And so I think we need to address and maybe look at that.
Councilmember Lee, would you just point out the line number, page and line number?
It's
1 and
page
6.
9, and it's line 2 for Q, and it's that, yeah, page 9.
I must have different numbering. CQ. Okay, I got it. Oh, line 38.
And Q and R, I think it's important that there's communication that's allowed to some degree.
Do you mind if you want me to read that real quick, Councilmember? Q is failure to direct questions regarding city employees, staff, policies, practices, and city operations to the city manager, department heads, and when information is requested directly from department head, failure to timely advise the city manager in writing of the details of the request, and R is unnecessary and excessive disruption of city staff. Am I reading the right one? In the performance of the regular assigned duties.
Yeah.
So you're saying that if you just essentially we need to make the city manager aware if I can't get a hold of Shane and I want to do a ride along on a Friday and he doesn't answer, I shouldn't have to feel like, gee, I can't have a conversation with him. I agree with
right. Or if there's an electrical outage and you go to the emergency area and you talk to the staff there to see what's going on. I don't see any reason why that can't be done.
I completely agree. And I'm not sure that this envisions that, but if we need to
I just want to
tweak
be
the
careful
verbiage to make sure it doesn't.
That doesn't prevent that.
But there's always that balance between, you could make it 90 pages long if you tried to anticipate, and then you'd still miss something, so it has to be a little broad. That's always the case with code and policies. Having said that, if there is an opportunity to clarify, and I think most of the issues that have been brought up so far are really not a change substantively, but are a clarification where maybe a little more specific, or the appeal authority, and et cetera. So that's...
Okay. And then just a provision for whistleblowers. If somebody were to come to a council member in a whistleblower situation, what would be the standard procedure for that and dealing with that and confidentiality? I think that should be addressed in it as well. I didn't notice anything on that. And
I guess the question I have, do we have any city codes that have that in it already? Or
what about an employee policy?
I don't know that we do. But, I mean, there's obviously federal law has.
And state as well.
State as well.
Okay, and then the other thing that I had, let me see. And you know what, some of this stuff has already been changed, so I apologize if somebody's already caught it. And I'm just now seeing it. So, let's see. Trying to think. Oh, on page, well, it used to be page 8. I'm not sure if it's still page 8. It's item L. Okay, item L, repeatedly attending meetings of the body when the official has not prepared himself for the meeting by studying materials provided prior to the meeting, as it is evident by the official demonstrated lack of knowledge and understanding of the matters scheduled. Sometimes we don't get the items on the agenda in enough advance notice to really have a good understanding, and I just want to make sure that this doesn't get us caught if that situation happens where we don't have adequate time to be knowledgeable on that subject.
Well, I think a lot of it depends on what your definition of knowledgeable. I do know, studying through various other city codes, there's some cities that take that very seriously. And in fact, if you're not prepared and the mayor feels that way, you're excused from the meeting.
Yeah.
I mean, what they want is they want the people that are actually voting on this to do their homework and to be able to contribute, but the big thing is to make a good decision for the citizens of their city. And I think that you're right, but I think what we do is we make every effort we can to get the information as soon as we can and be organized in those things. And of course, always, there's certain things on the agenda that you probably know a lot more about because you've been working on it, or that's something it's over your department, or that's something you're interested in, versus other things you read through the material and you don't know a whole lot about them. And but at least you read the material, and that's important as well.
I think I agree with that. It also says repeatedly, and there's a pattern, and so it's all of this. Some of it depends on judgment, right? And you're sort of making the assumption that it would be a little bit unlikely that a majority or 2/3 of the council would all collude or something into, or it would look obvious that if they were. You'd really have to egregiously not be prepared, I think, and at that point, it would maybe become obvious, and you could ground the case. But if that's abused, that's why it's important what the mayor said, I think, to have some sort of an appeal, that there's some sort of right of the person accused to but it's unlikely, I think, that just because I forgot someone's name or I corrected myself on a number or something, that I'm going to be thrown out of the meeting because I wasn't prepared.
Right. Well, and I think there's a process specified in section L there, subsection L, that indicates, it would only be considered unprofessional conduct by an official. Being unprepared would only be considered unprofessional conduct only after having been advised on at least 2 previous meetings by the mayor or the mayor pro tem, the chair of the meeting, or of the body, that the preparation is deficient. Or upon the written notice of 2 other members of the body. So there's a provision there that it has to be something, I think, that's it's clear that preparation for that by that given individual has been egregiously avoided. I think that's what that's dealing with there.
And
So-
who gets to judge one's mental capacity?
And that was going to be my question too, is as I look at that, depending on the topic, I feel like I'm pretty knowledgeable now of the way things work in the power department, but sometimes Gary talks about stuff and I'm like, okay, you totally lost me. And if he gets, and that may be an area of expertise for one of the other council members, and that becomes as you mentioned, speaking as the one that it references to that would make that judgment, I'm not sure I'm incredibly comfortable making the judgment to say, you know what, Councilmember Garn, you just really don't look like you know what you're talking about, so that's your warning. You know, I don't know how you word that better than that, because I'm not so sure I would be comfortable.
My wife tells me that frequently, and usually she's correct.
I know
could have her come in
one, I know there's one who could fulfill every rule in there, but I don't know if that one exists upon this planet. So I think we need a neutral party to do the judging. Why did only 3 make this document? Why wasn't there a committee outside of this board formed? You know, we're talking about, Jake, you insinuated that there could be 3 colluding. Well, why did this panel make this document?
I just had a few more things.
Yeah,
though,
if
that I
you'll wait,
wanted to
if you'll wait
look
until
into.
Councilmember Lee is done.
Well, I
and
thought
then
everybody was.
address
Well,
those.
yeah, we're going around this, and if you don't mind, because I have a few more things I wanted to add, and then you can go. Okay, so then another thing that I was concerned about is the page, well, it was page 9, it's item number 6, and it's the procedures upon filing a complaint of unprofessional conduct and penalties for engaging in unprofessional conduct. And I just put down some notes here, and maybe they've been addressed. I know there's been a lot of changes that have been done. But I just said there must be due process. The accused have the right to hear the charges before they are made public. They could even, as far as, do we allow them to hire an attorney to represent themselves? And is the city prepared to spend money defending itself? And, you know, these are things I think we need to maybe consider. And then also, if an item, let's see, if you take an action, is the accused be counseled privately by the mayor or senior member of the council unless there is a conflict, and then the council member is selected? You know, I mean, do we need to get into that as far as how that process is going to work? And then also, are these proceedings going to be done at all in a closed-door session, or is it going to be done publicly? How is that going to be addressed as far as when it is done? And then the other thing that I think needs to be addressed that I didn't notice, do we want anything on there on dress standards? I don't know if that needs to be addressed.
It says in there now you can't discriminate against dress standard.
Okay, I didn't know. I know that it had been talked
Against
about.
dress.
And then,
Against the plainness of one's clothing, perhaps.
maybe.
It does say it in there that
Okay.
you can't. I'll find it.
Okay, that's fine. I just didn't know if we wanted to bring that in. And then I didn't notice anything on sexual misconduct or sexual abuse. Should there be something? So.
Wow, we're a bunch of heathens.
So anyway, those are my things that I noticed that I don't know if we need to have them in there, if the state code covers it. And then, one other thing. The swearing-in ceremony, I think at that time, that's when they take the oath of office and abide to go by the code of conduct. So I don't think you need to have signing of it.
Are you implying in though that when one is sworn in, that's when they would have to, because we are kind
Take
of
the oath.
changing the rules in
Right.
the ship here. When Sean Reyes swore Larry and Jake and I in, this is not what we were sworn into.
Right,
So
right.
have we explored
And
state
that's
statutes there,
what
or
we
can
would
this
need
be
to.
imposed?
And we would need to find out how we would go about doing that if we want to start at this position first.
Is that all you have? Comments?
The only
Thank you.
thing that we swore to
Councilmember
was to
Adams?
obey the Constitution.
All right. In the humblest way, I guess, that I can talk about this, number one, you know, I do love my religion, but sometimes I feel like we need to ask the question, are we in church here? Or are we just trying to do what's best for our neighbors? I also think that we need to put emphasis on a neutral party to avoid anybody seeking one out and singling out another. Now some questions about how come only 3 made this? You know, whatever that may be. But while we're on that topic, you know, a while back, Councilmember Garden talked about somebody who didn't want to be revised the automobile policy, and I feel like perhaps if these are being authored by people who we don't know, I think it's only fair that the author of this, Chris, you said there was somebody who used to write state law. Is this a former senator or so that helped write it, or?
No, the author, the primary author, has been the three of us. The content has been the three of us. And just so everybody's aware, most of the content has been taken largely, I mean, we consulted a number of different sources, other governmental entities, including several other cities around the United States who have similar type of codes of conduct for their elected and appointed officials, and a number of other entities. There's also Chapter 58 of the Utah Code annotated, as well as the Chapter 58 of the Utah Administrative Rules, which were largely referenced in this. The individual that I referenced earlier, as far as being the one who formatted, typed, and put this together, who's done a great deal of this, is Mr. David Robinson, sitting on the front row over here. So that's not something that's unknown to the council, and it's again, Mr. Robinson can speak for himself on his own qualifications for that. But again, can't emphasize it enough. The content of this was at the discretion of the three of us. The format and what went into it, into putting it together into this type of a format, similar to what he's done in his previous professional life, was Mr. Robinson, with our collective contributions. Okay?
Cool.
So that's the answer to that question.
Cool.
I think the only thing I would add to that is now we're at a point where we're considering all the language publicly as posted on the website, and asking for your input as well, Councilman Adams, and yours, Councilmember Lee. And it's not my turn yet, but I just wanted to make that point. So,
cool. Okay, we spoke about 4 attorneys who had worked on it. Can the other 2 of us who haven't had a chance to meet them, can we get their names?
Well, they're just pro bono, they're just friends, they did it for free. They just reviewed it.
Can we get their names just to email them? And
Well, we can get any, if you know, an attorney, if you want them to go over it for you.
I certainly would
At the
support
moment.
having David Church take a review of it. I don't have any problem with that whatsoever.
Well, I think that's a good thing, actually.
But there was a solid 4 attorneys who worked on this, pro bono?
Well, they reviewed it.
I think there were people who are attorneys. I mean, I think there's a member of our, I don't remember if it's
We
Mr.
actually
Sundloff, I think.
We have 2 attorneys in our planning commission.
Correct. We have 2 attorneys from the planning commission who were part of that.
and they actually made some excellent comments
They
that
did.
we've discussed tonight as well.
So, and then the issue I raised a second ago about, whether or not one is grandfathered in, and I don't know. I guess that's a question for an attorney.
What do you mean by that? I don't understand.
Well, 3 of us were sworn in under a certain set of rules. 3 of us campaigned on a certain set of rules. And that's all I'm saying. I'll do whatever you guys want me to do. Don't worry about it. In the end, it's
really not a matter, if I can respond to you, Dave, it's really not a matter of us, or you of doing what we want you to do. That's not what we're asking. The state municipal code provides that a governing body may adopt rules or ordinances that expand the reasons or establish more restrictive procedures for conduct, or for applying punishment or expulsion of a member from meeting and those kinds of things for disorderly conduct.
Cool.
The code states that. So this isn't about, applying anything or changing the rules midship or changing the game. This is applying a series of standards for us and outlining those specifically so that we can have an orderly way to conduct business as a council.
And in fact, most cities have these, and Kaysville does too. It's just that ours was very sketchy, just one page. Most cities have a little more involved
Awesome.
code of conduct and
And
ethics.
I do know that you can change the rules midstream. I know there's been cities where they've had mayors that have been doing things right, and the city council will actually change midstream rules and take power or an authority away from the mayor.
Well,
So,
if 3 council members equal 1 attorney or judge, I guess that's answered.
Yeah.
So, anyway, just a thought. And this is just more for education of the public for maybe some who have or have not read it. And I'd just like you to maybe put yourself in our shoes up here as to what's being asked of us, as to, you know, people that you voted in. Approved snacks. There'll only be a certain level of snacks. It has to be, I guess, sitting here, provided by someone. I don't know who approves what the snacks are or aren't. I kind of like Sour Patch Kids. Do we get like right on the wall what we like sitting here when we get here? So the approved snacks, I wonder if we're stepping, you know, there's kind of the letter of the law over here. There's the complete opposite of the letter, and then there's this nice spirit of the law in the middle, where is a really great place when you can master that and live your life to it. So I just wonder how far to each extreme it's going. I'm happy, you know, with whatever you guys decide, whatever the council decides, but snacks, okay. I mean, I don't know if anybody has any medical conditions. Perhaps they have specific things that they need to bring. And then unwelcome nicknames. I don't know, never seen that in a state document anywhere. Seems like maybe a hurt feeling there somewhere, I don't know. The big one though would be, I guess, Facebook. Have we addressed Facebook for us public officials? And my recommendation there would be that we are not allowed on any uncity sponsored or sanctioned Facebook page or Facebook groups, pages at all. That it has to, if we're going to act as an official member, you know, and you guys talk in here that even a public member who outside of this building, if they have an issue, they can basically come file that complaint strong enough and get you kicked off the council, just one member of the public. I, for one, like to have a good time. You know, I was up in Bear Lake over the weekend and really goofing off, you know, with my kids and stuff, and, you know, I love having, I mean, if somebody thought, I just don't think that's becoming of a council member. Are our whole lives under a microscope here? How much, I mean, think about it, all of you. I get I didn't help write this, but even those who wrote it and one who didn't help write it, think about it. This will fall back. This isn't going to come back on one, you know, and if it does come back on one and the one felt, hey, I'm being targeted, you know, then it will just go to the levels of appeal, and we're all going to be having to sign to this. So think about your personal lives, your family vacations, or when you're just being you, having a good time. Is that going to come back on you? What if you're down at Lake Powell and you do something goofy? Well, I think I'll file that on him. I don't like the way that person did that. And like, I think we're stretching pretty far. I like the majority of it. I totally think it's great. The question I raise is, are we stretching? Facebook, is it appropriate for us to be on there if we're elected officials? Is it appropriate for us to be on sites that are not condoned and sanctioned by the city? And these are points I just want to throw out for the city. You know, in the next meeting, come in public comment if you choose, and say what you have to say. Has Councilmember Adams made mistakes on Facebook? Yes, I have. Am I sorry for them? Yes, I am. Do I feel like Facebook is a three-dimensional form of communication? I absolutely don't. I'm not the only one on this panel who's had trouble on Facebook. I'm not the only one in this room who's had trouble on Facebook. I think we could eliminate a lot of that, you know, and say, okay, it needs to be on the city website. If we're going to say something, it should be in official capacity, or we say it only on our own individual Facebook page. So just food for thought there, and I'm sure the public will have opinions on that. Phones, we can't touch our phones. I like what Mayor said about his kids. I, for one, have 3 medical issues at home. So who's going to be the judge of that? Do I not get to respond? Or at least check and go, okay, it's not my family. Don't worry about it. So something to think about there. I mean, I think there's cool. And I did send an email around saying I felt this is a little bit letter of the law, and these are some of the reasons why. You know, I think we all, you know, for instance, growing up, I can remember being at the kitchen table with my siblings, and I didn't like the way, you know, you always have the one, you don't like the way they chew their food. You know, but you put up with it, because they're your sibling. You deal with it and you move on. how much of this is like, okay, I don't like the way you chew your gum, stop. I don't like the way you leave the toothpaste out next to the sink, you know? I just wonder. I love the majority, don't get me wrong, I really do. David, I really do. I love the majority of it, really do. I think it's awesome. Brilliant work. I just, and you're probably not the one maybe who put all this, you know, every little deal in there, or edited it. My apologies, now I'm mixing the record probably. A 30 to 60 day review by the public time frame I think is fair, because this is pretty big. I mean, I think the voters have a right to take a look at this and decide if they want their public officials to sit up here scared to death of doing anything. I think this is going to stifle some of the work and the productiveness that can come. David Church did say, do your deliberations in open. He said, you know, the public wants to see that, even if sometimes it gets, you know, a little bit dicey. So, you know, on that topic 2 weeks ago, yeah, I apologize. Chris, I apologize. I let my emotions get the best of me, and it happens. You know, that was obviously a topic that's near and dear to me, and they got the best of me. You know, so, but, you know, this is going to really, and I don't mean this crudely to anyone who helped put it together. It seems like it'd be easier to go get a lobotomy from a doctor and, you know, and just cut out a lot of personality. You know, I, for one, like personality coming through out of people, and without the fear of having to have a $1,000 fine. There's also a $1,000 fine in here, up to $1,000, that any council member can be fined based upon, I think currently it talks about the mayor being the ultimate judge. I think we should break that out a little bit. You know, maybe Shane, maybe somebody off the elected body. But a $1,000 fine, and then also talks about a 60-day public shaming. There'll be a document that will hang out on the wall here and shame you. I mean, I don't know if some of the points, just some of the points, are pushing us back into the dark ages, or if they're allowing our free expressive rights and our civil rights, our First Amendment rights. And I think, well, we still have those rights even as council members. So some of it I think could lighten up a little bit, and I think the big ticket items, yeah, for sure, they're just fine. But how about a staff code? I wonder if there's a code for staff. I talked to Shane earlier, he says there is, he says it's archaic, so we could take a look into that. But I think perhaps we should, you know, just throwing that by way of for a future date, maybe we need to do the same thing for staff. Let's see. Oh, and then one, I kind of read it vaguely in here. I know in meetings past, you know, I can remember, you know, there was a time when the public was encouraged to get up to do call to the public. But today I noticed the public was discouraged to do call to the public, you know, and is that in there? Does anyone know? And then I think they were discouraged in two ways. I think as some came into the room tonight, there was a, hey, this is not going to happen, so if you would like, you can go home. And I think to somebody that said, that's a little level of intimidation also, that says, okay, should I go? And then I think that how the meeting was prefaced tonight, you know, I don't know, can anyone help me understand? Larry, can you help me understand? Is something like that in there where we don't, I mean, I think they have a right to say, the public has a right to say absolutely anything under the sun they like without a precursor of, hey, if you're going to say this, you know, and I get it was still open to them, but I saw the level of intimidation. You know, it was like, you know, forgive the religious reference, it was like a cricket's fast and testimony meeting in the LDS church, you know. And so I just wonder, are we, you know, what are we fostering on all levels of the panel? So those are some of my points. I appreciate you guys spending the time to put it together. It's brilliant, it's great. I think some things could be loosened up. I think common sense public members will say, you know what, if the guy voted in really loves the potassium in bananas, I mean, I don't care if he eats a banana. You know, I think there's a certain level where we're infringing upon rights and agency. But the rest of it, I think, you know, it's great, it's fine. And I'm glad, I mean, how much time does the public get to review this? Because I know some were like, hey, where is it? Why can't we see it? It's been on there for a few hours now. How much time are we kind of thinking to let the public have a review of it? Because I think initially, I'm not your boss. I'm not any of your bosses and you're not mine. They're the bosses, you know, but is it fair that we say this amount of bosses that we are beholden to get to tell us how to act when there's this many bosses out there? So I think ample time for all the people / our employers should have a right to be able to take a peek at it and say, no, I think that might stifle. Free enterprise is not the word, but I guess, you know, free enterprise in government. And so I think an ample opportunity for them to take a look at that would be fair to all.
Thank you. Councilmember Garn.
I just had one other thing, if you don't mind, real quick, that I forgot. Sorry.
No problem.
I meant to mention this. I didn't write it down. We specifically say planning commission members. Can we take out planning and just use commission members? Because we're in the process of possibly
Yeah,
doing
that's
more
right.
than
That's a
just the planning commission.
Yeah.
So,
I think exactly like that. And I think one of the things in the future, you know, I think there's a lot of areas that we'll want commissions brought in. Like, for example, what we're going to do with the library, the old library. I think that that's part of the process. We get citizens involved in that, and they're appointed to look into that. So, I mean, it should apply.
yeah. So, sorry.
No, I think that was an excellent point and one I hadn't thought of. But yeah, it should apply to, I guess, anyone appointed, you know, elected or appointed officials serving the public.
Yeah.
So I guess I would just start out by saying that as elected officials, we should hold ourselves to the highest standard. I mean, a lot of the criticism of elected officials is that they have a different standard than everyone else. You know, that there's one standard for the citizens and another for elected officials. So we certainly should have the highest expectation of integrity and behavior and civility and working for the common good and being respectful of each other, of anyone. So I think that's one point I wanted to make. Another point I wanted to make was that a policy like this is pretty common for cities. I think I already made that point. But also it addresses everyone. And for that reason, I agree with Councilman Adams and others who said that we don't, although we'd like to get it adopted as soon as possible, we can certainly take a little more time to get more input. And there's more suggestions tonight. And there's one thing I've learned serving on various committees is you don't edit on the fly in a meeting and then vote on it, you know, because that just doesn't work. So I don't anticipate voting on it tonight. Still need to continue to work with a lot of energy on doing it. And I agree with Councilman Adams that, however, I don't know how much the policy actually gets involved in some of the things like behavior outside of a council meeting or a public meeting. I think it very specifically limits itself to public meetings and then other forms of communication that deal with public issues. But
when acting in an official capacity.
Right. And, you know, I'm sympathetic also to some of the other points and thought the same thing. I read it. Well, what if there's an emergency? You can't look at your phone, you know. So I think most of those, and maybe it gets a little too specific there, but then again, that's that razor's edge between being too specific and too general. And the former policy was extremely general. And I think some of those things that are individual items are subject to interpretation, but what you don't want is a situation that's distracting to the public or to other members of the council when trying to conduct business. So some of those things were designed to address those issues. And then just, you know, as far as personality, what can I say? I'm an accountant, so I only have slightly more personality than an actuary.
So you have the unfair advantage over me? That's not fair.
You're an actuary?
Well played.
But, you know, if you look at some of these items, they're not really dealing with personality or style at all. You know, derogatory personal, and it does sort of address, I don't know that I'd be in favor of not being able to post on Facebook. I mean, personally, here or there, but I try to limit my Facebook book posts to things that would be informational. So I try not to even necessarily have an opinion, but like the Facebook post on the policy, I just said, well, here it is, here's how it kind of came about, we welcome comment.
Can I comment on that one, with your permission?
Sure, yeah.
Just, you know, I've had people say that, yeah, even a positive comment starts to insinuate, though, just a disaster in there. So, and those groups are controlled by other administrators, you know, that there's no control over this body. I don't think anyone's an administrator on one of the Kaysville Facebook groups, but I just think, you know, allow the public to go in there and allow the public, you know, to be able to view your personal page if you like, make an announcement. Or the city sponsor page, you know. Maria does a great job of keeping that up. And, you know, then at least there's a city control over that to say, okay, you know.
Yeah, and
I had to admit myself to Facebook Anonymous. I'm 60 days sober. Loving it.
You've done great. But let me just say that, I see it as a tool, right, to be transparent, to get certain information out. And where that's addressed in the policy, though, I think, if you look at some of this, so by electronic, it mentions by electronic means or otherwise, derogatory personal comments about an official employee of the city or a member of the public, making any generally recognized derogatory gesture, publicly questioning the character or motives of an official in a manner which claims or suggests the official is not acting with integrity, the use of crude, offensive, or threatening language by verbal, electronic, written, or any other means of transmission. So it sort of addresses, you know, that behavior that would include behavior on Facebook, rather than sort of limiting us to, I can't, you know, do a double twist off the off the houseboat on Lake Powell because somebody might be watching me and that could be considered unprofessional conduct. No, that's not what we're after, you know, or just the use of media to try and, because my whole thing is that I really, for my whole life, just my background, wished that citizens, not that they have to know everything, but would become more and more involved, always vote, become more and more involved and more aware. So if Facebook can be a tool to get information out so that people know better, then I would hate to limit that, but we could limit the type of communications on Facebook, which I think we've done.
Please don't take me wrong. I'm trying to cut off social media. I guess open comment, I open myself up here, is nobody thinks it would be wise to have it just come over on the city's Facebook page and the city website?
Well, you know, for example, today, you know, I know sometimes people ask city questions. And if you're a council person and you know exactly what the answer is, I think that's not only appropriate, but I think it's helpful to the people. And sometimes there really is misinformation out there and they're wondering about certain things. And if we know the answer to it, I think it's very helpful to have that out there.
And like you say, that was an example
today.
today.
The city's Facebook page and still do that, though. So we would provide the medium. It would still be there. We wouldn't take it away.
You could do that, I guess. It seems like
if the people would go there,
you know, a little bit challenged. The other thing is they're asking the question. So, for example, the post I put in today and also the comments were in direct response to a citizen request for the information in both cases. And usually when I posted it is somebody has asked me a question. And so I think that's a question that maybe more people would be interested in. So I'll put the information out there. But
well, maybe we'll. Yeah, I don't know.
I think Mr. Garn had the important defining point on that is the derogatory. I think that's the critical word, the derogatory posts about other individuals, whether they're public or whether they're officials or whether they're city staff. Those are inappropriate, would be unprofessional conduct. And I think that's what we're we envisioned as we included that type of language in the document. Not that you can't post your Bear Lake pictures, or not that you can't, or that we are limited to just posting. Because, for example, I mean, it was mentioned, the mayor mentioned earlier today at the beginning of the meeting that there was information that had been spread out, that in fact, there was specific information given posted and emailed this week by a certain group in Kaysville, indicating that there was a move about me specifically looking to do away with the water parade. And it couldn't have been more false.
Let's keep
And
on what
I know we're on point, but there were questions about that. There was a lot of question going on in the public about, well, is this true? What's going on? And I think that's an entirely appropriate. There were no derogatory comments made by either Councilwoman Lee or Mr. Garn or myself in response to the questions that were going on about that. We actually put the information out there that was absolutely not true.
And Councilman Page also responded to that.
Oh, did you respond as well? Sorry, I did.
I'm just slow. I have to work during the day.
Councilor Garn,
Anyway.
continue on with your thoughts.
I don't think those are inappropriate Facebook posts, so.
Yeah. So, yeah, I don't want to belabor that point, but I do think that, well, I don't think it's maybe necessary to prohibit Facebook posts, that many of your other points I completely agree with. I don't know that those things would be, that they're certainly not explicitly in the code, and if it was ever used that way, to limit speech in any way, to,
prohibiting or anything
prohibit
like that. Just
personality or any of
just a
those
set
things.
site. So, because you have different administrators in all those groups, and it seems like, anyway, it would just be more of a neutral format. You know, maybe Maria's the administrator over it, or Shane, and
Yeah,
that's all.
and it might be good just to say, you know, you can go to the Kaysville City Facebook page and get the answer to your question, and maybe just a reference over.
Maria has done that in the past, posted it like on the specific group, the larger Kaysville group that we can't really control people join. I think a lot of them think that's an official group, although it's not, but Maria has posted on our official Facebook page and then shared it over there, and that's sharing our official word, and I think that's also entirely appropriate. But especially if we got to the point where we were announcing official city events on a non-Facebook page, I always think our Facebook page should be the central place, and then we can certainly share it out to wherever other places. I agree with that.
And then the last comment, and then I'm done, but I would think that, I don't know if 30 days would be appropriate, you know, a couple of meetings maybe out there, maybe, you know, we're the 21st, so maybe reconsider on it's surprising, we mentioned it's already taken like 2 or 3 months, and I think to that question, sometimes if you try to write the initial draft by committee, it gets very difficult to do. So you do your best to do an initial draft, and then you distribute it widely, and that's exactly what's happening. Well, what about this? And so many excellent comments, several of which I'd never thought of before, have come up. So we need to now take the time, and that will take some time, to incorporate those comments in and then to relook at it. So that's my final comment.
Can I throw in one or two more, Mayor?
Yeah, sure.
Your discretion. I'm just also looking for the all-state accident forgiveness in here. You know, hopefully there's going to be some form of a spirit of the law, and you know, I think as a neutral party is the one to have the final judgment on this. So hopefully as we review and get public comment on it, we can think up of a fair way. There's a couple other things just quickly. Council activities, it talks about if a council member doesn't attend them, that you can be like sanctioned and kicked out, you know. And so okay, what about when a council member isn't invited to that activity? You know, so can we put that wording in there? That regardless of feelings towards one another, we are still a council, and I think we offend Kaysville City when we, you know, for example, if we were to build a float for the parade and 4 out of 5 of us were included in an email chain, you know, I think we've all equally offended each other in this last 6 months, and I think we could all, you know, totally rise above that. I'm willing to, I know that, but I think there's little things little digs, obviously, that have insinuated this, and so, you know, let's say that I've got a baseball tournament in Nebraska, and you guys have scheduled this big thing or whatever, or let's say like the Bowman's breakfast thing, and I can't make it. Let's say that happens like 4 times. I mean, I think I'm the only one with kids of my age. Well, no, Jake, you've got youngsters. So I think I'm the only, well, no, and Steve, so.
Mine are your exact ages, I think.
So for the 3 of us, it's like, we're gonna be torn, you know, we're kind of, our principle is to have family first. Our commitment was to come to every council meeting that we could. By the way, when I asked you, when I was running, I said, how many meetings do I have to go to? What am I getting into? And you're like, you know, if you're on vacation or whatever, it's fine. There's no, you have to come to everyone you can, you know? So, but, like, okay, what, you know, am I supposed to, are any of us supposed to like stay home from a bona fide family function? And what if some of us have more than others? And I think we need to have a little bit of a backdoor for some of that stuff. You know, I'm not saying you're not all growing on me, but I do love my 3 boys and my wife, and, you know, if there's something they got going on, I think I need to be there. So I hate for that, I hate to be stressed out at that event going, well, I might be sanctioned next week.
Well, one thing we need to do, though, is it's just like, you know, we've been planning the last, next year's vacation time. First thing we do is my calendar, I see when our meetings are, and I schedule around those meetings. I mean, and I think it's really important to understand that, I mean, we don't sacrifice our families, we just have to work our schedules. And I think that that's a lot of it.
Do you have 3 boys in comp baseball?
Well, I didn't have 3 boys in the
Currently.
past, but yeah, I know, and it's,
Can I get a little
and
understanding?
there's no doubt about it, that
And you
that's
can't
part
plan
of
it
it.
either, 'cause you.
And, you know, and that's part of it. I mean, but I think a lot of it, when we made a commitment to come and serve, that was part of the commitment, is that we serve.
Well, yes, but this wasn't part of the commitment. These knew on it, so have a little
Now, are
mercy
you-
is what I'm asking of the body of the council.
Are you just referring to activities, not the meetings themselves, missing?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, like hardcore like meetings, yeah, I think we all need to
That's
do everything we
flexible.
can, and maybe
That
even,
should be flexible.
like if you've missed, you know, a couple in a quarter, be like, okay, we can't go to St. George, I've got to be here. But like an extracurricular activity, it says in here, like if you miss extracurricular activities, I almost feel like, are we shunned?
Yeah,
Are
I agree, we probably
are we trying
should
to force friendships?
relook
or-
at that,
They've
because
always been kind of on a volunteer
In here,
basis.
it's kind of spelled out,
the
just so you know.
extra activities.
Well, I mean, that's why we're having this discussion.
Yeah.
Cool. So hopefully. you
Right,
guys
and in
will
fact,
consider-
I think there's 3 times a year when you can be, and I'm going to need to use my first one, next meeting, because I'm going to take a short.
You missed that one
try
meeting.
my- Yes, I did. I didn't know it was there. It wasn't in.
I did
but-
too, to be fair. I didn't either.
But there is and I think, again, it's a pattern. So there is actually an ordinance, not just in a policy, but an ordinance that, and I can't remember the exact language, I just know it's there, that if council member is not coming to meetings, the police can actually come bring them to the meeting, you know,
Yeah,
so.
I'm saying, like,
yeah.
if you're just kind of at home, like, I'm not gonna go, right, that's definitely, get to your meeting, right? So I'm saying that, like, if you have a doctor's note, or if you bring a plane ticket back from Disneyland with you, here's where I was, you know? So, hopefully there'll be spirit in some of the things, that'll be great.
Well, Council, I think this has been excellent discussion. I don't, as was mentioned, probably don't need to edit on the fly, but based on some of the comments that were shared, the document is currently on our website. I can hear Shane typing away over there. Oh, that was Maria, or I guess I should look. But I know that you've been keeping notes, and as has Shane. I would recommend that we do a couple of things, that we take a motion to table it, and I think at least tabling it for 30 days with it posted on the website, and then providing opportunity for folks to give feedback. Ryan can create us an alias email address. We can't use feedback at Kaysville City because we're already using it for something else, but if it was follow-up at Kaysville City or something, mailbox. Well, I was thinking if it was a distribution list, anyone that's interested in receiving those feedback emails from the public. I probably am not interested in getting all of each individual ones, but we could have a centralized mailbox, and then if you're interested in getting every email from, then we can have the group maybe look at or trying to incorporate some of those things. So I'd recommend that you table it until our August 18th meeting. Leave it on the website with a link of an email address that you can send your comments to, where they could be appropriately compiled. And I'd also recommend, if someone wants to make a motion, we table it, that we authorize staff to at least send a draft and ask David Church for he may do it for free anyway, but he may charge us too. So, but he certainly, I think, has that kind of expertise and knowledge where he can just on the fly say, yeah, that doesn't work or that doesn't work. And we've seen that in some of our discussions with him. But I think we're probably pretty close to that point. I think we've had great discussion. I think that discussion's been compiled, and this can become a working document, and then visit again in 30 days or 28 days.
Hey, one thing I would like to say, though, is I think we're going to make probably one more. You know, we still have some information and never even got into this one that I think was very useful.
Yep.
And I think a lot of the things we had tonight, notes have been taken. I think that we'll probably create at least one more document to narrow it down a little bit better. And then that's probably the one we should be putting on the website that we could have people look at and review.
Yeah, like if there's an exception to some of the letter of the law stuff that cuts into personal things, cell phones,
Right.
food types,
Well,
family trips, just kind of like an exception, or, under these exceptions, when it works. Stuff like that we could add in, would be cool.
But it's a process, and I think that's the thing that everybody needs to understand and it's just like, and I was telling Jake today about this, it's just like when Benjamin Franklin, the last day of the Constitutional Convention, he looked at that and he said, I don't think there's a person in here today, and I'm saying my words, he's much more eloquent, but that really likes this document that well. Everybody knows there's faults. But when everybody worked on it, we have the best document possible and the closest to perfection that we can have because everybody is part of it. And I think that's the thing that I enjoy about this. I mean, Shane's looked at it, Dean's looked at it, and I think that that's really important. And feedback like this is important. And I welcome the public to look at it as well. And I think that's an important issue as well. So
When it's finalized, can we get it condensed down to like that big so I can keep it in my pocket? What it's going to be? Wait a minute.
Yeah, what we can do is we'll put it where you can just put it on one of these, but you can't look at it during the meeting.
Yeah, so just say there'll be a degree of mercy and then things beautiful.
So how would we make that motion? Just that we'll
Motion to table.
I make a motion that we table our code of ethics and conduct of elected and appointed officials for 30 days, and or I guess 30 days until August 18th. Is that the date?
Yeah.
And then further review it.
Yeah, for further review
And instruct staff to.
Maybe can we open that to public comment in that meeting? Can we plan on that, or?
Yeah, I think so.
Sure.
And also the instruction to staff you were going to mention, Councilman Snell, that
And
as part of
To get David Church to review.
okay, and
David
and
Robson
instruct the
has a
staff to have
comment.
David Church review this as well.
David has a comment.
I know, I just wanted to make sure the count sounded like we were still talking before
And you made a motion, and I'll second that motion.
Okay.
So
I think we have a
don't have
motion.
hanging motion.
A motion and a second for, to table the item, and it's clear what we're wanting to do as far as posting it and making it available and those things. And I would say some kind of a central email address. I think the most effective place, and we will most certainly have, I think it makes sense to have an opportunity for the public to comment. Clearly, the most effective forum for that feedback is probably going to be electronic, so that we're not writing on the fly. So for the next for the next 4 weeks, as folks are reviewing this, we will most certainly have the opportunity to comment. But it also might be helpful. That's probably the best place to send it. And I just, for some reason, I can't think of a good word to use. I was going to say it could go to City Council at Kaysville City, which would come to all of us, but I think it probably needs to go to other folks. Maybe not everybody wants to get it, or you may all want to be on that list. So whatever the email name is we come up with, I really like feedback, but it's just I think we've registered some other things with that email address, so it might be difficult. But we have a motion and a second, but I yield just a moment to Mr. Robinson.
Can we open it to everyone, though, if we're going to open it to one?
I've only got one that's asking right now, but when he's done,
This is just an administrative matter. David Robinson. I have been the slave to three councilmen, and last night at midnight I received Councilman Page's last amendments.
And I apologize for that, by the way.
I finished those at about 2:30 this morning. I would plead with you, let's not change streams in the middle of the horse.
Yeah.
And so I would appreciate, following the pattern we have, that the proposed amendments come through ultimately Councilman Page, and then I can change them in the document. I can take what Councilman Page gave me 2 other responses tonight that I need to amend and get in there. And I have another one that I received, and I have made notes here, and I will try to have by, what is today, Thursday? By Monday, I will send to Maria a vision with all the things we've talked about and that Councilman Page has given to me, and then that might be the appropriate thing to post on the website, so that we don't go through all the stuff we've had here tonight in the public, that at least we've had the chance to change it and respond to all of the things you said, and I think that would be helpful.
And I agree with everything that you said, and if the council doesn't have an objection to that approach, that's fine. But the future comments that we receive from the public, I think it may be behoove the council, or at least those interested in being aware what those are, so that, if someone says absolutely strike this, we forward it straight to the Councilmember Page. Councilmember Lee and I might disagree that we strike that, and then all of a sudden you've got a working document that we're not all aware of.
Mayor, there are some things that have been suggested that I won't put in there as amendments, but I will provide an explanation as to what happened so that everybody can understand the why and wherefore. And then you can move on that, and you'll have all of the information available to you.
So you almost have like notes at the end of it, like here's all the other ideas, and then when they get voted on, you could plug them into your amendments. Is that what you're saying?
It's not my intention to try to ram something down anybody's throat. I started with a blank piece of paper and the instructions of these 3 men, and I think we've come a long way. And it's my intention to carefully consider all of the input.
And maybe this is, I'm trying to think of the right way to say, and I want this to be as, from my heart of hearts, I wholeheartedly recognize and appreciate all of the effort that you've put into this. And I don't think that we could thank you enough, and certainly the countless hours are something that should be, that we will always remain appreciative of. At the end of the day, it's not up to me, it's up to the council members, but I feel like eventually when we get to public feedback and consideration, if the council wants to appoint you to remain in that position, the reason why I'm struggling with the right way to say, I don't want to come across as ungrateful.
I said today to my daughter, I'm not appointed, I'm not elected, nor employed. And so the minute you want to say, Dave, we're going to take it over, more power to you. Now, I will not object.
That's my question. I'm not necessarily suggesting, I at least think it's something the council needs to answer. At what point if we're going to post this publicly, there's something a little uneasy, and I almost hate saying this because I don't want to come across unappreciative, but there's a point to say, once we have a draft that we're going to post publicly, and then we're going to welcome amendments, at what point should that be an official task of the city?
I brought to this task 10 years of writing legislation and administrative rules. And that's what I brought to the task. And probably nobody here has that experience.
I was going to say, you may be more qualified, and the council may be fine with that. I just feel like we at least need to do it.
Anytime you want to take my backpack, you got it. And I'll continue to help as long as you need me.
Excellent. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, 2 other comments. Mr. Lewis?
I would recommend that somewhere on the top page, you identify that this is the one that's going to be reviewed, and you give us 30 days from when that's posted, not from today. So if you post that 10 days from now, I would recommend that 30-day window start then. But somehow on the document itself, there needs to be some identifier so that we know that we're not looking at an old one.
There is an identifier on the front page now.
But
the identifier is today's date, and the new one will have that version date on it.
And to that, thank you. We'll be sure to that point. If we're looking at a meeting and Mr. Robinson's gracious enough to do what he's doing, but we don't have that until the 8th, that now puts us to the 8th. Well, excuse me. Let me look at my time. We've got another week. The other option would be our first meeting in September is on September 1st. That gives you a full 30 days once you have it available for feedback. Only because I was looking at my calendar, I saw Ryan's text, and he just recommended ethics at KaysvilleCity.com would be a good.
Wait, you're texting?
No, I didn't text anybody.
Good thing it's not voted in,
I think it's not
man.
passed yet.
I opened my phone to look at the calendar, but ethics at KaysvilleCity.com I think is a good one.
Unless we change it.
But right now we currently have a motion to table until the 18th. The other option, if we want it, because really we don't have a full 30 days. If we go from 2 meetings tonight, we have 28. And we're not even going to have it up for the public to review, it sounds like, until at least Monday. And so the other option would be to bump it to the September 1st meeting, which gives you 35 days.
That's good, and I think it's fair that if it doesn't come out, you know, we follow what Mr. Briggs is saying, you know, that maybe David takes a break for a minute, and it takes 15 days from now, so, 30 days, I think, from the time that it's posted would be a nice feel for the community. That's fair, so that they're not beholden to something else.
And maybe editing it on the fly is not what we want to do either. Maybe we wanted to compile what all of those comments are and then have staff say, all right, we had 12 comments about this suggesting, and we had this, and then that's what we deliberate in September 1st, and then we go to a final draft. Because I think that's probably, and then personally, I'm even more okay with your services. I think the only thing that felt a little uneasy for me is if comments are coming in, going, and then going back to you, and then you do or don't ending them, someone saying, well, did he get to decide what made it in or didn't? And that's, but
Maybe
if we
a paid staff member takes over at that point, you're making a great point.
If we compile, at least between now and if we, now I'm back, let me back up. 25th, if we're going to make it available by the 25th, we could receive comments through Friday, the 26th of August. That would then give us 6 days or give us the weekend to compile and to put together, and then we'll discuss what those comments are on September 1st. That way we're not just trying to, but then that gives staff a few days to say, we'll post this on Monday, we'll accept feedback at ethics@KaysvilleCity.com through August 26th, and then we'll come prepare to discuss it and decide which one of the things come in and out. Maybe we have a couple of drafts, if you don't mind not sleeping if we decide to continue, or would rather we just have staff do it. I don't think Shane's sleeping anyway, so that works out just fine. But we can pursue that. That's at least what I'd suggest, but it's different than what we have as our motion, so.
Yeah, Mayor, I agree with all of that. I think the only thing I would add is if Mr. Robinson doesn't sort of act as the central person to make all the edits, then you probably need to assign one person, whoever that is, to compile everything, because otherwise you're going to get multiple versions that are being edited in different ways. So you do have to have one person that takes all the comments, synthesizes those, and the key point on whose policy it is, it's our policy if we read it. If we've read it, we understand it, and we approve it. So who's doing the editing is not who's making the policy, and I just wanted to make that point.
And maybe just from my perspective, I think for me, it feels most appropriate to have a staff member, rather, and maybe that's Shane, at least compile the comments, or if Councilmember Page wants to continue, and that email address, ethics.
I like him doing it.
That email address, ethics@KaysvilleCity.com, any one of you can say, yes, add me to that. So every time someone sends a piece of feedback, I want that in my inbox, and Ryan can just check your name, and you can be aware, but we can have one person compile them and say, I think that's important to know. We had X amount of comments for this, we had X amount of comments for this, we had, and maybe then we get a report on what all of those are and then ask for the final draft. I'm not sure I would continually, because as Mr. Lewis said, you've got, well, I'm looking at the July 23rd version. What are you looking at? I've got the July 26th. Oh, well, that whole thing you just talked about, we fixed that in the 26th version. Well, how come nobody told me? Let's gather all those comments, decide which one's making it in and out, and then look for a final draft. Takes a little bit longer, but it feels like it's probably a good approach.
I think a couple more out there.
Yes,
This lady and.
We'll take this gentleman and this lady, and then we'll
Mike Flood,
done.
just for the record. No offense to Mr. Robinson and his expertise. I don't mean to marginalize that at all. But I cannot believe that our city is using a private citizen to draft a document like this. And I say draft, I know he's doing some edits, but he also got up here a minute ago and passionately spoke about the amount of time he spends and the things you're bouncing off him, but all the compiling and he's doing. What I'm concerned about is this here can open the city up to liability and to legal exposure. I think the city attorney should be drafting this, or David Church at the least. I'm concerned that you've involved a private citizen, regardless of his expertise, to draft a public document that will go on legal record and that will now be scrutinized, could be scrutinized and could be legally challenged. I think it needs to be drafted. And I'm familiar with what you do. I'm a developer and I go to city council and planning commission meetings all the time. I'm always working with the city attorney when they're dealing with these kind of things or with changes to ordinances or simple things as an easement that I'm dealing with the city. You don't have private citizens involved in doing that. That's just my personal comment and feeling, but this needs to be done professionally. No offense, Mr. Robinson, at all, but it needs to be by someone who has the legal right and responsibility to stand up and defend the city if necessary against this.
Thank you.
I think that's why we're having it reviewed by an attorney.
That's right. That's why we're having it.
And
You didn't hear me. If that's your response, you didn't hear me. It's a
Sir.
matter of being drafted by a professional, not drafted by a private citizen and then looked at.
Wasn't,
But
but to be fair to him, there were draft edits in our emails today. I thought they were from you, David, so I think
Okay,
be a little fair to him.
Ma'am, thank you.
I assume,
Would you state your name for us, please?
Sharon McKinley,
Thank you.
I assume this is going to be a living document. Once it's finalized and once it's published, it's not set in stone. In anything I've been involved with in writing documents, there's a review period. Say it's finalized and enforced for a year, 2 years, whatever. And then it's looked at again and revised as needed. Also, I agree with this gentleman. It needs to be a city document, and it needs to be finalized as a city document.
It will be.
And let's see, the other one was, you had said, you, Mayor Hyatt, had said, we might not want to look at all the comments. Do you not want to hear what different people have to say and the input to it?
Let me clarify. I may not want to receive all the comments as they come in, but undoubtedly I would want to review every comment that comes in. I'm just not sure I want my phone going off every single time is what I was saying.
Okay, I just was, as I was sitting there listening, I thought, if someone has a comment, it might not be valid to someone that's reviewing, but like to Mr. Garner, Mr. Adams, it might be very relevant, you know, and those need to be considered to either be accepted or rejected.
And not by
But-
just a majority. I see what you're getting at, because the majority could just say, no, we don't like his comment.
Exactly.
But why is that comment invalid?
Yeah, and
Which is the suggestion we're making, is that staff compile all comments and staff not decide which ones make it to the council and not. They simply compile them all for us to review.
yeah. And I think this is a good document and a relevant document, but it needs to be revised periodically and looked at periodically, and it needs to be an official document from the city, not a private citizen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Sunloff, we'll give you one comment, and then we'll be done with further public comment. You do have the opportunity to send it to your comments to ethics@KaysvilleCity.com after this.
Yeah, I hesitate to even stand up, but I'm stretching my husbandly and fatherly duties as it is coming to a meeting besides planning commission. So I don't want to come back, and so hopefully maybe I could.
Will you restate your name for us?
Yeah,
Mr.
it's
Sunloff?
Josh Sundloff, sorry. So I just want to make some comments and maybe get them in the record, and then I don't have to come back when the public speaks again. And because I'm on the planning commission, this affects me, I thought I could say some things. So I do very much agree with the notion of an appeal process, whatever that is. I trust the council will make a good decision. I think Councilman Adams is, his point of maybe the spirit of the law or having some mercy in there. I think one solution possibly is the notion of this presumption against the accused party, having a presumption that they are acting in good faith or that they are acting with, integrity or intent, a good intent or whatever, something along those lines, and then we're not just railroading a person notwithstanding what their actual intent was. So that's, I guess, the second comment. And then the third comment that I would say, and I am an attorney, but I don't fancy myself a First Amendment scholar by any means, but very fundamentally, the First Amendment regulations that deal with the First Amendment are okay. It's not an absolute right. They are okay when they regulate the time, place, and manner of speech, but not the content of the speech. So I think this goes arguably in some things. It maybe does regulate content. I suppose David Church will have more of a scholarly or accurate opinion than I am, but I think there might be some things that could arguably be regulating content. As long as it regulates the manner only and not the content, I think it's okay. The other, I guess the last comment I'll say is I think related to the First Amendment, we as general citizens don't necessarily agree or voluntarily agree to every law that we have to abide by as citizens. When we voluntarily agree to things, we can be held to higher standards that arguably restrict our rights. As an attorney, I have a code of conduct that I have to be bound by as a member of the bar that is very restrictive in some people's opinion. So I think council members, it's by analogy that I think maybe there can be a higher standard that is constitutionally valid imposed, and I don't necessarily have an opinion that the document as currently constituted does or does not live up to constitutional scrutiny, but that's, I guess, a comment that I would say that maybe David Church will flesh out. So those were my last comments. I appreciate the consideration. Thanks.
Thank you, Josh. All right, council. So right now we have a motion to table this until August 18th. We're looking for a substitute motion or a restated motion to table this until September 1st, posted on the city website, inviting people to make comment, and when appropriate, have staff ask David Church to review it. That's what we're looking for. I think sounds like that's what we're looking for.
Can I just say so moved by what you just said?
I think so.
Okay. I think that was very good.
Thank you. A motion by Councilmember Page and a second by Councilmember Snell. As outlined, any further discussion? Mr. Garner, we start a vote.
Aye.
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 Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for staying, and thank you for your feedback. It was very helpful. We'll look forward to getting your feedback at ethics@KaysvilleCity.com, and we'll have something on September 1st. Next on our agenda is council member reports. Anybody have a report they would like to share? Seeing none, we'll move to minutes. You have before you one set of minutes dated, sorry, where did mine go?
It's dated July 7th.
July 7th, 2016. Had a chance to review it. Welcome a motion for their approval.
I had one, just kind of language. It's on the very final page, page 12 of it, right above the, it's about halfway down the page. It says, Councilmember Snell stated that he could like a detailed report of the charges. I'd like that strict, it should be would like a detailed report of the charges. But that way, just a change of the word there. I think that
Coulda, woulda, shoulda.
would make more sense.
Thank you. Was that a motion with that amendment?
That was a motion with that amendment.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Motion by Councilmember Snell and a second by Councilmember Garn for approval of the minutes as outlined. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Thank you. Voting is unanimous. Next on our agenda is approval of claims. You have two sets of claims before you, Council, because they go over two different fiscal years. So you have a set of claims dated July 18th, 2016, 4:36 p.m. for fiscal year 16 in the amount of $1,406,771.56. And you also have a set of claims dated July 20th, 2016 at 3:10 p.m. that is for the fiscal 17 budget in the amount of $650,142.24. If you had a chance to review, I'd welcome a motion for their approval.
So moved.
Yeah. Do we have to do separate motions for both of them, or
I don't think so.
can we just do them both?
I don't know. Yeah, I think we're
Yeah, I
just
think
fine.
the same agenda item, so
Yep.
probably just one's fine.
Thank you. There was a motion by Councilmember Garn, I think, that
I'm not sure who was first.
and a second by Councilmember Page for approval of the claims. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Next on our agenda is review of calendar. You have before you a calendar, and we'll just point out on this coming Saturday beginning at 7 a.m., we have the Bowman's Pioneer Day breakfast. Monday is considered the holiday, and so city offices will be closed on Monday, but the Bowman's breakfast is on Saturday. We welcome you all out. A couple of other items also on your agenda. Thursday the 28th, I think you've probably all received an invitation, but Reading Horizons is having the ribbon cutting ceremony. It sounds like they're planning quite the carnival for people of all ages. You're welcome to council to join us for that if your schedule permits, and join us for the ribbon cutting ceremony. And
I'm sorry, Mayor, what day and place was that again?
that was on
Thursday, July 28th.
Thursday, July 28th at 3:30 p.m. at Reading Horizons, 1194 Flint Meadow Drive in Kaysville. We also have, and I think the council received an invitation 1 week from today, Thursday. There is the Celebrate Kaysville mural open house that was painted by Earl Jones, and that is at the Kaysville Library, the new Kaysville Library branch. Mr. Jones will be there, and that is the mural that was previously in our old library. And there is a reception at 9 a.m. from 9 to 10 at the Kaysville Library. I'd also invite you, that's not on our schedule here, but also invite you to join us for that. With that being all of our items, I'll welcome a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
You got it. I'm the second.
There you go. Motion by Councilmember Snell, and second by Councilmember Garn to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Wow, that's a record.
10:30.
I know.
That's
cool.
I did.
Did you? I think that's right.